filled with self-hatred,
yes,
they tend to like the filthiest, kinkiest sex acts imaginable.
Oh, that's right.
Which tends to cost more. The average well-adjusted gay man has no desire to smear fecal matter all over his partner's face to be beat up by him. But that is exactly the sort of thing that these repressed conservatives are willing to pay top dollar for.
Okay, as well as the services of transsexuals, I understand.
Yes. A lot of the Republicans repeatedly call the prostitutes faggots or start crying after they've had sex with them.
I suppose the prostitutes are shoring up on their politics so they can talk to the Republicans.
Ha ha, Andrea, what do you think this is? Pretty Woman? They're just there to get right.
Thank you, Marie Byron.
RNC's always a good time.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, where, as always, you're invited to call in, take control of the airwaves, and talk about whatever is on your mind. 603-283-6160 for those who would like to do that. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Ian.
And Bonnie.
And coming up, the numbers for April of this year, or however all of that actually works. The numbers are out. The inflation numbers that we've been anxiously, I don't know about anxiously waiting on, but I've been curious about them since we've really been paying attention to this year. And I don't know, maybe this is something that Free Talk Live has always done, and it just isn't something that I paid much attention to, but it seems like as inflation gets worse, we talk about it. Well, that's a stupid statement, isn't it? That as inflation gets worse, we talk about it more often here on the show.
Well, it's a good observation.
Yeah. Thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate that. As far as observations go,
that's generally true for anything. If it gets worse, we're probably talking about it.
Right. But it is getting worse, and we were expecting...
Oh, no, it's better now. It's lower. It's gone from 8.5%.
Percent increase.
Right, up over the last year compared to the new number, 8.3. So everything's going to be better.
I had 8.6%.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I missed that one.
You're right. It is 8.3%.
Yeah. See?
But nothing I saw...
It's turning around, Aria.
I didn't see anything that was trying to, spin this in a positive light, though. I mean, when I went to Drudge Report this morning, I was like, oh, my God, the number's finally here. There was a great big red frowning face right there in the center of the page, and right underneath that, inflation barrels ahead or whatever.
See, they're fighting inflation. Didn't you hear that Joe Biden,
they're fighting inflation in the same way that you fight fires by throwing more gasoline and wood on it.
Yeah.
But I have not seen anything about Joe Biden wanting to fight inflation.
Oh, that's been the whole messaging from. Not that I pay close attention to this stuff, but I saw an image from some speech he was giving, and he's in front of a backdrop, kind of like how Bonnie's in front of one of these what they call step and repeats in the business. Right. If you watch on our webcam over at video.freetalklive.com, you see the LRN.FM logo, the Free Talk Live logo. Well, he's standing in front of one that says fighting inflation, and then it said something else, right? So that's the messaging coming from the federal government, is that Putin is doing this and we're doing everything we can to stop it.
That's what I've seen Jen Psaki basically say a lot, but like Ian, I don't follow them closely because I know they're all full of crap and I have way more important things to learn about in this world than whatever the heck they're going to lie to me about.
They're also inconsequential, right? What Joe Biden wants and what Jen Psaki wants, or any of these other talking heads that are elected, it's not going to change anything, because the people who are actually implementing and creating these policies, they aren't elected, and they're not going to change when we go from Trump to Biden or from Biden to whoever is next, just like they didn't change when we went from Obama to Trump. Like Dr. Fauci's a great example. He's been the head of the CDC or whatever he is for 40-something years. It's easy to focus on Joe Biden and Donald Trump and blame them for all things. However, the machinery behind them doesn't ever actually change.
That's true. Yeah.
That's why Joe Biden is inconsequential. However, inflation is barreling ahead, and as we were talking about, the actual powers that be, they don't change when the president changes. The heads of the Federal Reserve Bank, they don't actually change. I think the Secretary of the Treasury, whatever that particular job does, may actually change.
Yeah, I mean, every now and then bureaucrats do get changed out, but it doesn't change the direction of
Isn't
tyranny.
Janet Yellen that right now? Secretary of the Treasury.
So.
Well, whoever the secretary
He used to be the head of the Fed.
Yeah, but whoever the Secretary of the Treasury is right now, it's some woman, and she was in Congress, I guess, this week, and she said that abortion is good for the economy.
Okay.
Just a weird reason to be pro-abortion.
Yeah.
That is a weird reason, but you make a really good point that whether Janet Yellen or whoever is the Treasury Secretary right now or the Fed right now, they do occasionally get replaced, but they don't really get replaced. They just move from one position to an almost identical other position. And because of that, the Consumer Price Index, and I don't remember what all of the little indexes are and how they measure inflation and all of that. However, the Consumer Price Index, which I believe means the actual price that you see at the grocery store, accelerated 8.3% in April, more than the 8.1% estimate, and near the highest level in more than 40 years. So,
sorry, just be clear. That number reflects the percent increase from a year ago in May or in April.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't represent from month to month.
That's right.
Right.
All right.
And that's what I want to know. Is it? I guess it's not super important. Inflation rose again this month, last month, and continuing a climb that has pushed consumers to the brink and is threatening the economic expansion, said the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I don't know what economic expansion they're talking about. I've seen, a lot of people praising the I've seen a lot of people praising the US dollar as being strong, but then you look at things like this, even if the USD is up by 8%,
what does that even mean?
I don't know.
Up against what?
People want the USD more than they want, Bitcoin and stocks and stuff. I think that's what they mean when they say it's strong.
Somebody said 8%. What is that?
No, I was saying even if the dollar is 8% stronger now than it was a year ago, it's still down compared to the prices that people are paying. I just didn't complete that actual thought before.
The only thing the dollar can be stronger against is other fiat currencies, right? I mean, that's what they compare. Whenever you see some sort of news headline heralding the strength of the dollar, they're not ever comparing it to Bitcoin. They're not ever and by the way, Bitcoin's down again. It's like 28,000, 29,000.
I heard. That's painful.
Yeah.
But it's not the end of the world.
No, it's as low as it was in like just over a year ago. But they never compare it to gold. They don't compare it to anything.
Well, of course not, because it's never up against gold.
Pretty much no. I mean, gold has kind of sat still for the last decade for the most part, but they don't do that. They only compare it to other fiat monies, other government monies all around the planet. And that's an unfair comparison because to say the dollar is strong compared to the ruble, which, by the way, the ruble's actually regained everything it lost.
Yeah, I heard the ruble
dollar.
was strong right now.
The ruble is actually about where it was, last time I checked, which was a few days ago, about where it was right before the invasion, if not a little stronger against the dollar than it was right before the Ukraine invasion. But that's all they ever compare it to, is they look at the other currencies of the world and they say, oh, it's doing great. But all of the central banks in the world are printing. So it's a race to the bottom, and comparing it to other fiat currencies is like saying we have the best form of cancer.
You're absolutely right. And the Consumer Price Index is a broad-based measure of prices for goods and services, but notably, as we've talked about here on the show, it removes some very critical aspects of our economy.
Does it actually mention which ones are removed?
Yes, removing volatile food and energy prices, so-called core CPI. Hold on, wait, it's unclear then. Because they're saying it's still the CPI, the core CPI, which removes food and energy prices, only rose 6.2%.
Right.
So the 8.3% does include food and energy, it would seem. Which is clouding hopes that inflation had peaked in March. Well, it obviously hadn't peaked. But
technically, 8.5% to 8.3% is a peak, but that's barely statistically.
But I don't understand how that could be, because it's not like what happened to that 0.2%? Did they destroy some of the U.S. dollars in circulation?
It's just a government number.
That's another reason I really don't keep up with this,
manipulated.
is I don't even know what's true when it comes from these people.
Yeah, you can't trust anything from them. And so what you can basically say is, inflation is probably no less than this, but likely much greater than this, because they're padding this number.
I would certainly agree with that. And I think most Americans would agree with that based on how more than 2/3 of Americans are now living paycheck to paycheck. I remember when it was roughly a third or 40%, then it was half, and now it's 2/3 of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. And that's a large result of the inflation, the increase in the money supply that we've been watching go on since the COVID-19 pandemic began. Of course, the inflation has always been there, but the COVID-19 pandemic was really when they kicked it into overdrive. 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in on inflation or whatever else. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's Antiwar.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Free Talk Live.
We've had people call this show in the past and posit that the declaration of a national emergency essentially opens up all of the loopholes that they can utilize that have been built into the Constitution. Because as Lysander Spooner would put it, the Constitution has either been powerless to prevent this big tyrannical government that we have today.
Sure, a government far beyond the scope that our founders ever, even in the wildest dreams imagined.
Or it has authorized the government that we have today.
I can only assume that that's true. I mean, I used to be this. I can only assume that it's the Constitution that in fact authorizes all of this crap that I thought at one point was unconstitutional. And we are, as I stated, still under a level of martial law that was declared for the Civil War. Everything they're doing is legal, as far as I can tell.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airwaves and talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 if you would like to weigh in. Again, that's 603-283-6160. I want to say thank you to Wordus, who is actually last night's amplifier. That means he's a member of the AMP program. You can find it at amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com. It stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. So if you value the show, if you like the idea of a national radio show reaching people with the ideas of liberty and giving people a platform where they can call in and talk about their opinions, you might consider joining the AMP program. That's the AMPS program. That's amps.freetalklive.com, as Wordus has done. Wordus is a gold level amplifier, which means Wordus is giving, I think, $10 per month. We don't ask that. It only takes $5 per month. That gets you in. So thank you, Wordus. We're talking about inflation here. And the new numbers that have finally been released by the government, the numbers themselves aren't nearly as important as what people are feeling when they actually, live their lives. You can't really put a number on that, no matter how much it frustrates the government. That 8.3% increase to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, the average person out there living paycheck to paycheck, to them that's just white noise. And evidently, it is more than the average American living paycheck to paycheck. I have an article here from CNBC.com about how 2/3 of Americans live paycheck to paycheck while inflation continues to climb. Now, they, like most mainstream media outlets, they consider inflation to be an increase in the price of stuff. But of course, as we like pointing out, that's not what inflation actually is. That's a result of inflation. Generally,
it's a symptom.
Yes. Inflation is an increase in the money supply. If you print a lot more dollars, like if we just double the supply of U.S. dollars, take every single dollar out there and multiply it by 2, all of the prices are going to go up as a result of that.
That's correct.
More dollars chasing the same goods.
Yes.
That's right. Yep.
Inflation is showing no signs of slowing down, making it harder for workers to make ends meet. As they point out, the CPI increased 8.3% from a year ago, which is higher than the 8.1% estimate. I don't understand why the government is so inaccurate in its own estimates. The U.S. Bureau of Statistics.
I mean, it's the state.
I'm pretty sure they do things like that on purpose. And they have the excuse of, we're incompetent.
But it's the same data, right?
I don't know. I think there were some people that were just predicting it based on whatever factors they thought, and then the official numbers came out, so they were wrong.
Although it was down slightly from the March peak, which was a 40-year high, by the way, inflation is still growing at the fastest annual pace in about 4 decades. Rising prices are putting household budgets in a vice. Price increases are widespread, but look at food and shelter, which together account for 40% of the weighting in the CPI, that's the Consumer Price Index, and more than that for many households. So the Consumer Price Index, roughly 40% of it is just from the food. It's just people paying for food and shelter. That's the inflation. The increase in prices is just in food and shelter.
That's actually understandable. If not, it should be higher than 40% because, I mean, if you think about the average person and what they spend money on, shelter and food are 2 of the biggest expenses beyond maybe a car payment or something like that, right?
Well, they are certainly necessities, right? Those are 2 things that you really need in order to survive.
For sure.
Food and shelter.
And they're probably like the biggest chunks of what people pay every month too. Like definitely rent is really crazy high.
They do seem
rents
to be
higher than ever, actually. We talked about that in recent weeks where the lot of landlords last year told people they had to raise rates by like 30 to 40%.
Yep. While wage growth is high by historical standards, it isn't keeping up with the increased cost of living, which we wouldn't expect it to. No, of course not. When wages rise at a slower pace than inflation, those paychecks won't go as far at the grocery store and at the gas pump, 2 areas of the budget that have been particularly squeezed. It's not just that your dollars are worth less. There's also there are shortages in the supply. I don't know why gas is going up. I couldn't even begin to imagine why gas prices are actually going up on a daily basis. However, they are at a new record high, or at least they were yesterday. And I don't think of the increase in the money supply, the inflation actually accounts for all of that. And I don't think it's President Putin. I don't know what's going on, but it's severe, and people's wages are certainly not keeping up with it. So close to 2/3, 64% that is, of the U.S. population are now living paycheck to paycheck, which is just shy of the high of 65%, which happened in 2020, according to a Lending Club report. Which surprises me. I wouldn't expect that number to ever go down once it hits, a certain threshold. I guess it's good that people are trying to get their finances in order, but then again, the government
going from 65 to 64% isn't even worth talking about. It's not statistically significant.
In my life experience as a middle-class American who basically has known mostly other middle-class Americans, I feel like everyone I know lives paycheck to paycheck. Like even adults, it's always felt like my parents did. And
yeah, I mean, that is kind of the American standard in that way. It's really has more to do with Americans being trained bad when it comes to, or poorly when it comes to financial intelligence. They've never really understood debt. They don't teach about it in school. And so, whether they're getting into debt from going to college or racking up credit card bills, they end up with, I feel like the average household was like $90,000 in debt or something like that in the United States. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but it's something we've talked about.
It was fairly
before.
high.
It was shockingly high. And so people just load on the debt, and then you're owned basically from that point forward until you pay that off. You are living paycheck to paycheck. And that's because Americans have forever been trained that, it's fine to live beyond your means. That's what our society is based on.
Yeah, that's what credit cards are for, right?
Get a credit card. Go get a bank loan. Live beyond your means. You're earning this much money right now, but you're going to do better in the future, so go ahead. Live large. Spend large. You'll pay it off eventually.
Yeah, and they never do. And it's also worth mentioning that they point out the high of 65% in 2020. However, through a large part of 2020 and 2021, the government was paying people more money than ever to literally stay at home and do nothing. So those people who were living paycheck to paycheck, they were suddenly getting an extra $600 per week from the government to be, quote, unemployed. So, of course, their finances improved a bit. Probably.
But they just spent it all.
That they probably did,
yeah.
I would guess. But
or a lot of them were doing stocks. They're like, I'm going to do stocks now. And probably a lot of them lost money because they didn't know what they were doing.
Oh, I'm sure they did. Consumers who are struggling to afford their day-to-day lifestyle tend to rely more on credit cards and carry higher monthly balances, making them financially vulnerable. Found the survey of more than 2,600 adults. Overall, credit card balances rose year over year, reaching $841 billion in the first 3 months of 2022. Wow. I don't know what that means. They do give a link, so presumably
that sounds to me like Americans have over $800 billion in credit card debt.
Yes, but are they? Is that a yearly amount?
That would be a total amount.
Okay.
That's what they're currently carrying in credit card debt. That's my understanding.
At this rate, balances could soon reach record levels amid higher prices for gas, groceries, and housing, among other necessities. Hey, but it's okay. You could just skip some meals, maybe. That's what some single parents are doing in order to save money during this economic hardship. Skipping meals.
It's worth it to fight for Ukraine.
603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off, now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Ukrainian forces say they have recaptured several villages seized by the Russians north of Kharkiv, the country's second most populous city. The capture of the villages is a big confidence boost for Ukrainian troops, though it came on the same day that pro-Russian officials in the captured city of Kherson said they plan to ask Vladimir Putin to recognize the region as part of Russian territory. Sergei Kislistya is Ukraine's ambassador to the United Nations. He says the country is bracing for a long, grinding conflict.
I know the nature and the resolve and the traditions and the mentality of Ukrainians, and it is very unfortunate that almost every intelligence in the world didn't really grasp it until the latest invasion started.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson today offered Finland and Sweden defence guarantees in the event that either country comes under Russian attack. Both are considering joining NATO in light of Moscow's aggression against Ukraine. The British leader spoke after meeting the Finnish president in Helsinki.
The Russian invasion has changed the equation of European security, and it has rewritten our reality and reshaped our future.
The US Senate is expected to approve an additional $40 billion of aid for Ukraine that has now been passed by the House of Representatives. But Democrats' efforts to enshrine abortion rights into federal law were doomed to fail after Democrat Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia announced he would not support the move. It was sparked by the Supreme Court's threat to overturn the landmark opinion that has kept abortion legal in America for 50 years. The Al Jazeera TV news network is in mourning today.
When you talk about Shireen, you talk about somebody whose presence is felt in every home and heard in every home.
Reporter Shireen Abu Akleh, an American citizen, was gunned down in the West Bank town of Jenin in the midst of ferocious clashes between Israeli troops and Palestinians. Al Jazeera says her death was an act of blatant murder by the Israelis. The Israelis say she may have been killed by Palestinian crossfire. The rate of inflation in the US slipped slightly last month to 8.3%, but that's still close to a 40-year high. On the streets of New York today, commuters were sanguine about the numbers.
The gasoline yesterday, I think I paid $4.59. Crazy.
Chicken breast is like $7, and right now it's almost $17.
What are we gonna do? Gotta eat.
Jared Bernstein is a member of President Biden's Council of Economic Advisors.
This is a president that grew up in a household where when the price of gas went up, they talked about it around the kitchen table. So he is acutely aware of these challenges. And that's why he has dispatched his economic team, of which I'm a member, to do everything we can.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, where you can take control of the airwaves. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in. Talk about whatever is important to you, how inflation is affecting you if you'd like. 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And as mentioned, you know, inflation is not good. The prices are way up as a result of it. And because of that, people are now skipping meals and racking up debts. Ian, you pulled up some numbers about the huge debt that people are racking up. It's something like, I don't even remember the numbers now that you brought up. But
you're talking about the total household debt?
Yeah, household debt and credit card debt.
I think it was like 15 trillion.
Yeah, and something like the average American has more than $5,000 on credit cards.
Yeah, about $5,500 is the average American's debt on credit cards alone.
With daily life now the most expensive it's been in 40 years, single parents say they are running out of places to cut costs. I imagine that they evaluate their budgets, they'll find that's not really true, but the price of groceries, gas, rent, and utilities has marched higher over the last year, but wages have not kept up, and more than half of single parents make less than $15 an hour, according to research from Oxfam. Presumably that's Oxford Family or something like that. I'm shocked to hear more than half of single parents make less than $15 an hour.
That is a surprise.
That is really crazy.
It's kind of hard to even find a job these days where you make less than $15 an hour. And you're a single parent trying to raise a child on that? That has left many single parents skipping meals so their children can have plenty of food, providing less healthy meals for their families and culling expenses to the point where any unforeseen cost could mean more debt or worse. For those families whose finances often have slim to no wriggle room, inflation, coupled with the end of federal relief efforts like enhanced child tax credit payments, is that the extra money they were given each month for having children?
That's correct. It was money that they were receiving at the end of the year during tax time.
Right.
That got spread across a 12-month period. So now instead of getting it at the end of the year, they get it every month.
But that has ended now. So
I don't know about that.
Well, this article says it's ended.
Okay.
But I mean, they could be mistaken. Is compounding the financial strain. It's a really tricky game to figure out what I can do, what I can't do, and how can I squeeze a little more money here and there, said Elizabeth Seig, 33, whose husband passed away from sudden heart failure in 2020 at the age of 37.
Oof.
I mean,
if it was in 2020, he probably wasn't vaccinated.
You don't think so?
That didn't come out to the very end.
Some people, like high risk people.
Okay.
It wasn't until like December of 2020 that they started even getting the first rollouts.
See, that was my first guess. Sudden heart failure in 2020. That's suspicious, man. So Elizabeth was left to raise their 2-year-old son on her own. For a time after her husband's death, she received food stamps to help with grocery costs. But after she was able to start working again, teaching high school biology, she was no longer eligible. Her $25,000 annual income will also soon make her ineligible for the spousal death benefits she's received from Social Security.
It's so messed up. I've heard this from so many people that I've worked with at minimum wage paying jobs.
But she's a school teacher.
Well, I don't know. I just think what I was going to say is so messed up that if you try to make more money, a lot of the times the way that the system for welfare is set up, it's like, oh, now if you make more money, you're not going to be eligible for this. So you'll be making less money overall anyway, so you need to stay on welfare. It's like,
yes, it's incentivizing people to stay on welfare.
I've heard this from so many people I've worked with that they're like, I don't want to pick up more shifts or get a second job because then I won't get my benefits.
That's right.
We covered one such story here from someone who needed to make almost twice the amount of money that she was making from her job in order to make it worth it for her to give up those benefits.
Wow.
I looked it up real quick. The average pay for a school teacher, according to salary.com, is $39,000 per year. So she's making significantly less.
Yeah, maybe she just needs to move.
Yeah, it seems that way because 25. I know school teachers. They're not. It's not the most high-paying job. I mean, it kind of is considering
government school tends to pay a lot more than private schools.
Yeah, they also don't have to work very long hours. They get
half the
tons
year
of vacation each year. If you factor all that in, it's pretty good. But still, $25,000. That's lower than what you would make teaching in Mississippi. So she should move. Between the loss of survivors,
for all we know, she's a preschool teacher. It doesn't say, right?
It says teaching high school biology.
High school. Sorry, missed that.
Between the loss of the survivors' benefits and the nutrition assistance, she will have $700 less on hand per month this year than she did last year. So government benefits are going away, and because of that, she is going to struggle. She says she has cut back across all aspects of her life. She'll keep the air conditioner set warmer to help ease energy bills, foregoing the luxury of a cool house on hot Florida days. Okay, so she's in Florida. She is no longer able to enroll her son in gymnastics. She's taken on an extra tutoring role at work, and she's made a box of pasta suffice for 4 meals for herself so that her son, now 3.5 years old, could enjoy his favorite hot dogs and salads. Dude, that is bleak.
Yeah.
She has eaten essentially macaroni and cheese 4 meals in a row so that she can give her son hot dogs and salads, which aren't exactly expensive in the first place. In March, about 30% of single parents surveyed by Morning Consult said their household finances were worse than average versus just over 22% of all adults. I would expect, single parents to be doing worse financially than people who are not single parents. During the 12-month period that ended in March of 2022, single-parent households say they made about 16% less than adults overall per month and spent about 8% less per month. I don't really care about those numbers. Those are meaningless to me. stories about how this woman has eaten pasta 4 meals in a row. Now that's meaningful, but this nonsense about it's 22% versus 26%, that's meaningless to people, and I would expect CNN to know better.
They're just filling space.
Yeah, that's why I'm skipping it. On a month-to-month basis, single parents really don't have a lot of extra room to help cover costs. They're really living paycheck to paycheck, but that's true of 66% of Americans now.
I was going to say, I feel like this is also true of people with both their parents. They're always focusing on single parents, and not that...
Well, there's no doubt that it's harder if you don't have other people in your household. And that's why people should be taking on roommates, honestly, if you haven't done that yet. And
unless they make it illegal. Like Kansas,
they may do that.
Topeka, right?
I don't think it was Topeka. It was some other place, but I think it was Kansas. Taking on roommates is a way to reduce your household costs as long as you can find one that's trustworthy.
Very true.
Yeah, and that's so scary even for me when I just had Coconut. It was like, who can I trust to be alone with Coconut? So if I had a kid, I feel like that'd be really, really hard.
They do get some more examples, like in Brooklyn, New York. Jessica Ridout, 41, and her 2 children, ages 8 and 10, have adapted to a more vegetarian diet because of the rising prices at the grocery store. Pre-pandemic, Ridout would spend about $50 to $75 per week on food. That weekly bill is now $100 to $125, she said. That's amazing.
Wow.
$50 to $75 per week on food for yourself and 2 kids? Dude, I could spend that much by myself each week. I mean, and that's not even factoring in eating. And that's if I went to the grocery store, it would cost me more than $50 to $75 per week to feed myself.
And she's in New York City.
Well, yes, Brooklyn.
I feel like they added that little tidbit in to be like, see, this is a way that you can save money. Just stop eating meat. Eat lentils and crickets.
Yeah, they definitely threw that in there.
It's more profitable for the food companies and less nutritious for you, so your brain doesn't work correctly.
She does say meat is expensive, and I would be lying if I didn't say I wouldn't kill for a nice piece of salmon once a week. But she can't justify the indulgence of $17 for a piece of salmon when she can use veggies to make 2 weeks' worth of lunches for that cost.
She needs to get out of New York City because salmon isn't $17 here.
City people.
It would certainly help to leave New York City, but a lot of people just aren't willing to do that. They
love it there.
And I don't know why. I cannot see what the appeal is. Okay, look, you want to live in a city, I could sort of understand that, but why New York City? The biggest cesspool on the planet. Why would you want to live there?
Even as a kid, I never was interested in New York City. I'm just like, oh, gray.
If you don't count the times that I passed through on airports, I was actually in New York City for any substantial amount of time. It was once, and I never want to do it again. What are your thoughts? What is the appeal of New York City? Maybe you can call and enlighten me. 603-283-6160. When we get back, we're going to talk about Shanghai and the lockdown that we've been alluding to for a few days. So stay tuned for that.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring signs into the rally.
Walk with me. Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey. Who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't going to make it.
Wait a minute. Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Why are you running from me? Because you scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive. toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airwaves. Talk about whatever you want. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. Again, that's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Arya.
It's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And Bitcoin.com. Even though Bitcoin is down, you should still be learning about it because it's still world-changing technology. And it's not going away anytime soon. Don't let the doom-mongering out there turn you off of it. Bitcoin is going to be just fine. Cryptocurrency is going to be just fine. These things are here to stay. And if you look at it from a year ago, Bitcoin's not doing, super well. But if you look at it for 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, Bitcoin is doing just fine. And it's only going to do better, in my opinion, going forward. I'm not a financial expert, and I'm certainly not a soothsayer, so I'm not predicting the future. But based on the U.S. government's tendency to create money, I tend to think in the long run, Bitcoin is a safer bet than USD. So go to bitcoin.com to learn about it. Just click Getting Started at the top of the page. And if you already know about it, check out bitcoin.com's news site at news.bitcoin.com if you want to stay up to date on all of the news and headlines that are relevant to you. All on a sleek, easy-to-use modern website. That's news.bitcoin.com. We have David on the line from Fort Smith, Arkansas. David, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, I'm not a single parent, but I am a single income worker and a married couple. I've been married for 30 years to the same woman. We have
Congrats.
5 children. And, when I turned 16, my dad said, well, guess what? Your spending money is your responsibility now. And I have 4 siblings. I'm one of 5. And so I was driving a rake tractor and hauling hay for my grandfather when I was 12. And when I was 14, I got a paper route, threw my own papers, got up every morning, threw papers, had to go out and collect from customers on foot or on my bicycle. And then my brother and I went in together and bought us a moped together. Dad didn't help us. And
nice.
We both had paper routes, and we did that. And the thing that I learned at a young age was how to work. And
how to save, it sounds like.
How to work. Huh?
And it sounds like you learned how to save as well, because plenty of people can work, But if they can't hold on to what they've earned, then it does them no good.
Oh, I've got a son that when he was 21 years old had $45,000 in the bank.
That's great.
Paid cash for a Corvette, and when he went to trade it in for a new vehicle when he was 21, the sales guys asked him and said, "How much you owe for that?" He said, "I don't know anything."
Nice.
And they said, "Well, how does a 21-year-old pay cash for a Corvette?" He said, "Well, my girlfriend eats off the dollar menu," and he wasn't lying. And so,
no, I get where you're coming from, David. Unfortunately, that's not something we see a lot of. We do see it a lot in New Hampshire. Everyone that I personally know with kids has those kids like out there, collecting eggs or doing something like that as part of their family, homesteading or whatever. And it probably happens to some degree in the South still, but by and large, you talk about, riding a tractor at the age of 12, or people are going to scream child abuse and child slavery and all sorts of nonsense in modern America.
Oh, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
I'm with you.
I'm driving a tractor. I'm going to school telling my friends I drove a tractor all weekend.
I was working a cash register when I was, 7, 8, 9 years old at my mom's shop in Florida, and, learning the basics of customer service.
Somebody we know,
as early as you can.
Jay Noon, he's a host on this show. His daughter is like 2, and she goes out and happily feeds all the pigs and does farm work with him, and it's really cute.
Yeah. Well, we homeschool our kids too, so we raise slaves.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's what some people think about homeschoolers. Oh, yeah, you do that so your kids can work for you.
Well,
no,
David, thank you so much for the call tonight. I mean, it's always encouraging to hear these stories of people throughout the United States who are still, I'm not a traditionalist by any means. I don't think, tradition is anything important, but it is, some things are important. And among those are, raising children who can grow up to be competent, capable adults who can take care of themselves.
Gee, you think?
I do think that.
Yeah, it's radical now to have that perspective.
Yeah, that is a controversial opinion because so much of the American system is built around taking care of people, and so that they don't have to take care of themselves. Like we were talking earlier about the countless stories we hear about these people who make $28,000 a year, and they're like, I want to take more money. I could make more money, but if I do that, then I'm going to lose all these benefits, and to outweigh that loss, I have to make twice as much money. So more than, I don't know the numbers, but huge amounts of people are living on, social welfare and would not be able to maintain the lifestyles they're able to.
Well, and that's one of the saddest parts about the people who are productive, like David's kids and other people who raise their kids right to have a good work ethic and to learn how to save money so you don't have to rely on debt and you don't have to rely on the state in order to support yourself. The problem, of course, is the productive people are the ones who are paying the price to keep all these slackers, fed and clothed, thanks to all these state welfare programs.
But it just sucks because of the incentive. A lot of people are just lazy. They're just like, I want to not work and collect money. Yeah, those people exist. But it really does suck that there are people who are like, I have the drive to work more, but why would I do that? Just common sense and self-preservation tells me keep doing what I'm doing and collect my money because I have more money that way. I could take care of my kids that way and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's one of the saddest things in America.
That is common, but it's sad. It is sad because it's not like you're not relying on yourself in that instance. You are relying on somebody else. You're relying on the state, and that I don't know how people live with that.
Yeah, when COVID happened, I made the decision not to live that way, but most people don't have the moral conviction that I do. To be honest,
that's because they were raised wrong.
I lost my job during COVID, and I just went to do Uber Eats, and I didn't feel like figuring out how to get the $600 a month welfare. So that's kind of part of it. But also, I just was like, why would I do that? I don't know. I was just raised better than
there's some amount of pride in being able to take care of yourself and not having to go on welfare
and get fat. I'd probably sit around and get fat and sad if I wasn't working.
It is heartbreaking to realize that, a lot of people don't see any issue with living on government welfare. They have no sense of pride or no desire for independence or the ability to take care of themselves. But even beyond that.
Or even for, some level of greatness or accomplishment or anything like that.
That's true. They don't even want the bare minimum of being able to sustain their own existence.
Yeah, look at Sarah. Sarah, the welfare lady that calls in every night, her idea of an accomplishment is filling out a form correctly.
Yeah, she was proud of herself for going and getting a vaccine.
That's true. But there's also a moral issue at work here, which is that this money that they're getting is being stolen from other people. And they have no issue with that. And it's because they do all these mental gymnastics where, oh, it's not theft, or they convince themselves they deserve that money and the other people don't deserve it. Or no, it's really, billionaires like Jeff Bezos or whoever who are paying, for their social welfare.
No, it's really people like David and his kids, the productive the productive class in America that are paying those costs. And that's the sad thing is David and people who are productive like him are able to not only take care of their own family, but make enough money to pay off this just ever increasing in scope and cost government out there to keep all these people who could work. Sarah, the welfare queen that calls in, she absolutely could work, but she just chooses not to because she has bipolar.
Yeah, lots of people, I was about to bring that up. Lots of people think, oh, I deserve this because I have a mental health issue.
And
I'm
there's more
depressed,
and more.
and that's really just, I can't say that that's only laziness, but that's partial. I think it's partial laziness. I've seen it in my life millions of times.
I think the myth that there is a mental health crisis in the United States is the mental health crisis, right? It's just a lot of people who are self-diagnosing who want to believe that they're mentally ill or that they have some sort of mental health issue, so they learn what to say. Look, if I wanted to, I might do this sometime just to prove the point of just going to 10 different therapists. I don't have time to go to 10, but 3 different therapists and try my best to get a diagnosis from each one of them. Like, I'm going to get anxiety disorder from that one. I'm going to get schizophrenia from that one. I'm going to get bipolar, OCD from that one. Yeah. And I guarantee you, I can get those diagnoses from
guess
these
what?
therapists.
Those people have an incentive. If they're psychiatrists, for instance, they have an incentive because they can then prescribe you medicine. And that means you got to keep coming back to get new prescriptions, and that's business for them. So they have an incentive to find a problem with you. And the DSM, I don't remember what it stands for, but it's the guidebook to all things wrong with people. They keep adding new things to it over time.
Yeah. And, they do have that incentive, but a lot of these are also, if you go to the government and you have the look, I've got this sheet of paper that says I have bipolar disorder, I can't get a job. Oh, well, here's your welfare package. Also, we're going to pay for your therapist from now on because, of course, we are. So it's just this huge scheme of money being filtered around from people like David and funneled into their reckless therapists via the state and to people who want to convince themselves that they're special and they have these mental disorders.
People who make their own money, they're not paying into welfare because they want to take care of these people. They're paying off the government to keep them from shooting them for not paying for these people.
603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Ukrainian forces say they have recaptured several villages seized by the Russians north of Kharkiv, the country's second most populous city. The capture of the villages is a big confidence boost for Ukrainian troops, though it came on the same day that pro-Russian officials in the captured city of Kherson said they plan to ask Vladimir Putin to recognize the region as part of Russian territory. Sergei Kislistya is Ukraine's ambassador to the United Nations. He says the country is bracing for a long, grinding conflict.
I know the nature and the resolve and the traditions and the mentality of Ukrainians, and it is very unfortunate that almost every intelligence in the world didn't really grasp it until the latest invasion started.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson today offered Finland and Sweden defence guarantees in the event that either country comes under Russian attack. Both are considering joining NATO in light of Moscow's aggression against Ukraine. The British leader spoke after meeting the Finnish president in Helsinki.
The Russian invasion has changed the equation of European security, and it has rewritten our reality and reshaped our future.
The US Senate is expected to approve an additional $40 billion of aid for Ukraine that has now been passed by the House of Representatives. But Democrats' efforts to enshrine abortion rights into federal law were doomed to fail after Democrat Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia announced he would not support the move. It was sparked by the Supreme Court's threat to overturn the landmark opinion that has kept abortion legal in America for 50 years. The Al Jazeera TV news network is in mourning today.
When you talk about Shireen, you talk about somebody whose presence is felt in every home and heard in every home.
Reporter Shireen Abu Akleh, an American citizen, was gunned down in the West Bank town of Jenin in the midst of ferocious clashes between Israeli troops and Palestinians. Al Jazeera says her death was an act of blatant murder by the Israelis. The Israelis say she may have been killed by Palestinian crossfire. The rate of inflation in the US slipped slightly last month to 8.3%, but that's still close to a 40-year high. On the streets of New York today, commuters were sanguine about the numbers.
The gasoline yesterday, I think I paid $4.59. Crazy.
Chicken breast is like $7, and right now it's almost $17.
What we gonna do? You gotta eat.
Jared Bernstein is a member of President Biden's Council of Economic Advisors.
This is a president that grew up in a household where when the price of gas went up, they talked about it around the kitchen table. So he is acutely aware of these challenges. And that's why he has dispatched his economic team, of which I'm a member, to do everything we can.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, John Lee, the man who is suddenly centre stage in Hong Kong. Earlier this week, he became the city's new chief executive after running the only campaign approved for the post by the Chinese government. Previously the chief secretary for administration, he was the second highest ranked official in Hong Kong. And before that, he enjoyed a 40-year career, starting in the police force but eventually becoming its deputy chief. Analyst Bob McMahon of the New York-based Council on Foreign Relations says those qualifications worry many observers.
John Lee was a strong supporter of the, you may recall, the China extradition bill. That was actually lifted, but it had sparked protests in 2019. But because of his support, John Lee's support for that bill, he was sanctioned by the U.S. in 2020, and also for his role in curtailing political freedoms. His position is an incredibly tough one. In the best case scenario, seen as a technocrat who tried to restore this sort of stature of Hong Kong as a financial hub. He's saying, I'm going to get the economy back going again. It's notable he does not have the economic background that previous chief executives have had. And so that's raised some concern in the fact that he's had this security profile has raised a lot of concern that he's going to be doing Beijing's bidding on further cracking down on security.
Mr. Lee also has the pandemic to contend with, not only the ongoing threat of infections, but the brain drain sparked in Hong Kong by previous lockdowns. The main news again. Ukrainian forces say they've recaptured several villages seized by the Russians north of Kharkiv, the country's second most populous city. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson today offered Finland and Sweden defence guarantees in the event that either country comes under Russian attack. And Al Jazeera is accusing Israeli forces of the blatant murder of reporter Shireen Abu Akleh, gunned down today in the West Bank town of Jenin. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
North, an extremely vocal opponent of gay marriage, drew fire during his 2010 re-election campaign for saying that the legalization of gay marriage would lead to man-horse marriages. In one instance, he told the New Haven Register, quote, "It's a slippery slope. If we allow two men to marry, what's next? Men marrying horses?" But yesterday, North found himself at the center of a media firestorm when the New York Times published photos of North on what appears to be romantic outings with a horse. Gathered during the Times' 2-month investigation, the pictures show North in almost a dozen locations with the same 3-year-old mare. A former aide discovered links to numerous horse-related sites, including phillyfreaks.com and hothindquarters.com on North's work computer. The Times is accusing North of using federal funds to pay for luxurious trips, including a 3-night stay at the high-end Sueños stables in Catalonia, Spain last month. North released a statement yesterday claiming he only spent time with the horse twice while conducting research for his anti-gay marriage project.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, where you can take control of the airwaves and talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And coming up just over a month, I believe it's about 5 weeks away, 5 weeks in a day at this point. I'm not exactly sure. The Porcupine Freedom Festival is starting. They are officially sold out. However, you can still join us at Fork Fest. That is the decentralized, I don't want to say alternative, because an alternative suggests that it's competing and that it's happening at the same time.
No.
We're like, no, don't go to their thing, go to our thing. That's not it at all.
Come to both.
Yeah, ours is more like a decentralized continuation of the same ideas, but decentralized. It's really difficult to describe it. You'd really have to come experience it for yourself, because Fork Fest...
It's just libertarians at a campground hanging out. I mean,
yeah, but it has had speakers and stuff in the past.
It has had a band play in the past, sure.
There was that. I wanted to do it again this year, but we
couldn't get it together.
We ran out of time, and other people were doing other things, and I was like, well, I could find a singer, but that was why I quit playing in bands in the first place, because you spend 5 months to find a singer who shows up every 4 practices, and it's just a nightmare to actually make happen. But yeah, there is stuff that happens at Fork Fest. Check it out at forkfest.party. That's fork, like the utensil you eat with, fest.party. Where, like Pork Fest, a lot of people who don't know better would be like, okay, pork, P-O-R-K, right? Mm-mm. But no, it doesn't mean that. So check it out, forkfest.party. However, we do have callers on the line. Let's go to those. We have John calling from Texas. John, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hello. Yeah, I wanted to get some not financial advice, just like some suggestions maybe.
That's good, because we don't give financial advice.
Yeah. That's one thing I noticed. Everyone says we are not financial advisors. So
well, we're not. We're just 3 people who talk.
Yeah. Shiba, is that a good investment?
Immediately ask for financial advice.
That's probably my worst decision I ever made, was buying Shiba. Not worst decision, maybe worst crypto decision I ever made.
I mean, I've been out of crypto since the whole Shiba Inu thing really took off. Like Dogecoin was the big one when, I ended up being forced into retirement for the foreseeable future from cryptocurrency. Shiba wasn't really popular. It looks to me, as someone who's sitting on the outside who has an understanding of what's going on, that the ship for Shiba has already sailed. If you wanted to ride that to the moon and sell it at its peak, you've already missed that boat.
Yeah, I should have bought it in 2020.
Yeah, you should have bought it back when it was, 0.00001 penny. It could go up, but I don't know what it's at now.
Yeah, it went up insane between when it came out and its peak. I mean, it's not even ever going to hit 1 cent. That's like the great dream for Shiba, that it could hit 1 cent. But it's
Well, that was the great dream for Dogecoin for a really long time.
But
and
the difference is there's way more Shiba. So the physical amount of Shiba out there, if it got that high, would become more valuable than Bitcoin. So it's not even a very likely potential at all for this thing. Shiba is essentially what they call a meme coin. And so for listeners that aren't familiar with this, in the world of Bitcoin, there's all these other alternatives, right? So there's there's thousands of other alternatives to Bitcoin out there. And some of them are more useful than others. Some of them have interesting concepts behind it. So for instance, Dash is designed to be a digital cash. It's designed to be something that's actually used in business and actually people spending it and that sort of thing. And then there's others that are like Ethereum, where it's a programming platform and you can do neat things that you can't do with Bitcoin. So there's usually something else that alternatives to Bitcoin try to bring to the table, some sort of new innovation or whatever. Some of them die. We're seeing that happen. It looks like with Luna this week, which is sorry to see that go. But
I mean, there's a long list of ideas.
Failed.
And
failed long list of them.
I used to run a website called cryptocurrencycheck.org where, the idea behind this was during the ICO craze. The idea behind it was to evaluate these ICOs as they came out and give a likelihood about whether or not, and we made it clear this was personal opinion, whether or not it was a scam or a crap coin. Or both, because it could be both. And there were so many: orange coin, pot coin, hemp coin, canna coin. I could go on, lime coin. I could go on and on naming different cryptocurrencies that came into existence, had nothing to offer, but they got people to invest in them, and the next thing you know, they're gone.
Yeah.
And this is common. Shiba Inu, I think the ship on that has sailed. However, I was just thinking, I wish I could get involved in cryptocurrency because I could easily make an Ethereum, an ERC20 token called Golden Retriever Coin and just use my Golden Retriever as the logo for that, blast it on Facebook and Twitter.
It might work.
I could probably make a decent amount of money doing that.
But the problem is, number one, Ethereum is super expensive to transact. So if you were going to make a new meme coin, Ethereum, while it is incredibly popular, and that's why people put things there, you cannot go and buy $10 worth of Shiba because you would have to pay probably $10 in order to simply move it from one wallet to another.
Bitcoin Cash would be a better alternative at this point.
There's
certainly
a ton of great places to put tokens.
Can you make tokens on Bitcoin Cash?
You can.
You can.
Oh.
There's also, of course...
I have one I created. I don't remember what it's called now. I think like Satana Coin or something like that.
There's Stellar, and there's a bunch of networks out there where you can create tokens. But anyway, the point being, I think you're right, Arya. The Shiba Inu thing, it's sort of it probably has already peaked.
I certainly haven't recovered.
Is probably going down. It's like right now, I looked at the price earlier today. I think it's down to maybe an eighth of what it was when it peaked. So it's definitely way down. And you have to ask yourself, why would this thing ever be popular besides the fact that it's a meme? Because that's all it ever has.
It's not even the best breed of dog.
No, Elon Musk tweeting on Twitter about, Shiba Inu would be the best thing that could happen to it. And that's the only thing I could see in the foreseeable future that would cause people to, start pumping and dumping. But that's the thing with these meme coins, is that you're trying to get in on the ground floor and make money on what is almost by definition a pump and dump scheme.
Yeah, that's
Can
true.
I add on to this conversation real fast?
Sure.
In defense of Shiba, I was looking up some stuff, and Samsung and Microsoft have both kind of teamed up with them, and they're going to start using the Shiba coin.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, it seems unlikely. Microsoft won't even accept, Dogecoin. They'll accept Doge before they accept Shiba, and I don't think they're anywhere near willing to accept Doge.
There's no way anyone would accept Shiba for payments because no one would ever pay with Shiba.
And why would they accept that before accepting like Bitcoin or Ethereum or something first?
Microsoft has accepted Bitcoin in the past for some of their online services. I forget what.
But no longer?
Xbox or whatever. I feel like they stopped doing it when the fees got crazy, but
I know that Valve did.
Yeah,
I don't know about Microsoft.
And that's why the fees. That's why they're not going to use the bigger known coins because the fees are too expensive.
Well, there are
then
plenty
they should
of
use like Bitcoin Cash or something.
Yeah, there are plenty of Bitcoins like Bitcoin Cash or Dash or whatever, where the fees aren't ridiculous. That's the biggest criticism of Bitcoin and Ethereum that there are. But there are plenty of Monero has very low fees. There are plenty of top 100 cryptocurrencies where the fees are not unreasonable.
You do understand what the fees are like on Ethereum, right, dude?
Because Shiba's a coin on Ethereum, right?
Right. Shiba is just another Ethereum token. Which
Oh,
means
really?
anytime-
I thought it was at least like Dogecoin, where it was like its own.
Oh, you didn't know
That's
that?
why Dogecoin's better.
Shiba wasn't a big
Sorry
deal.
if I wasn't clear. That's why I was saying it's expensive to use Shiba because it's on the Ethereum network.
Maybe you said that it didn't register.
So if you want to go buy $10 worth of Shiba, yeah, sure, you can do that on an exchange, but then you've got to keep it there because if you ever want to withdraw it from the exchange, it's going to cost you $10 just to withdraw it. So it's a total waste of time. And this whole idea that Microsoft is behind this, I don't see any evidence for that. I think Microsoft made some sort of tweet about dogs at some point, and so the Shiba people went crazy and thought that meant that they were going to somehow do something with Shiba. So
Caller, I see stuff like that all the time, and I'll tell Ian, like, oh, this thing is like, I don't know, Walmart, they're accepting Bitcoin now. And then it ends up to not be true because there's just like crazy amounts of rumors about this stuff going around.
I mean, to be fair, it's not beyond the realm of expectation that eventually Walmart is going to begin accepting Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or whatever cryptocurrency. So I can understand why, if people see these things, they share them and assume they're true, because we are going to hit that point at some point. But you shouldn't get into cryptocurrency because you want to, get in on the ground floor of a pump and dump scheme. Certainly. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airwaves and talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in. Again, that's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And I want to say thank you to Elizabeth, who is tonight's amplifier. This means that Elizabeth is a member of the AMPS program. You can find it at amps.freetalklive.com. Stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. So if you value the show, if you want to help us reach a larger audience, show your support for the hosts and all of that great stuff, the AMPS program is by far the best way to do it. And it's probably, as you know, there's an advertisement running on Free Talk Live as at some point during the commercial about how it's probably the best bang for your buck you can get in the liberty movement. I tend to think that's true. I realize I don't have an unbiased opinion here, being one of the people on Free Talk Live. So obviously I want it to reach a larger audience, but I think it's probably the best way. Elizabeth here is a platinum level amplifier, which means that Elizabeth is giving, I think, $25 per month to the AMPS program. We don't ask that, though. $5 per month, that gets you in, and there's an AMP-only server, an AMP-only room on the Matrix server. There's an AMP-only Facebook group, and even an AMP-only podcast. So check that out, amps.freetalklive.com if you want to find out more about it, or sign up. That's amps.freetalklive.com. Let's go to the phones, however. We have Steve, who is on the line from Georgia. Steve, are you with us?
I sure am. How are y'all?
Hey, got a lot of background noise there from you. What's on your mind tonight?
Let me get out of the kitchen then. You got it.
I didn't even catch that.
He said, let me get out of the kitchen, yeah. Restaurant kitchen, one of the loudest places I can think of.
Certainly not a great place to sit there on hold, but I mean, it does happen, and you have been on hold for a while, so it's completely understandable.
It's all good. It's all good. Hey, so one of the things that y'all were talking about earlier was ways that people are getting, like, through this economically hard time. And one of the things that used to happen that I think we should bring back when I was a up-and-coming chef, it was not a big deal to be able to go to your boss and say, hey, can I buy at-cost food, right? And that's probably how I got 30 or 40% of my meals, was I would buy chicken at wholesale prices from my boss. Well, they're not doing that anymore.
It's probably difficult too. I mean, with so many of these places being, chain restaurants or places like McDonald's or something like that, I can imagine, if you worked for your local, if you worked for one of the local burger or something like that, you wanted to buy, their hamburgers for you to take home and cook. I imagine they would be okay with it. But if you went to your boss at McDonald's like, hey, can you sell me some burger patties at cost? I don't think they would even be allowed to do that, even if the manager wanted to.
Supply chain issues, too. The restaurants might not have enough ingredients. I don't know if that's everywhere, but...
Well, that's definitely a national issue with chicken right now. U.S. Foods is only giving out 80% of chicken. So if you order 100 pounds, you get 80 pounds.
What?
Well, beef and stuff... Say what?
So I assume they only charge you for 80 pounds as well, right?
No, yeah, they only charge you for 80 pounds. But yeah, with the culling of the herds and with the lack of chickens, right? Their lack of chicken meat right now. Yeah, they sent out a letter about a month ago and said, hey, we're going to send you what we can send you. And right now it's hovering around 80%. If you order 100 pounds, you're probably going to get 80.
So
this isn't fair. This isn't terribly uncommon. It happened a lot at my old job where like there would be a shortage of, pigs or whatever. So like, okay, well, if you order, this amount of ham, you're only getting, 75% of that. Or the chicken wings. Chicken wings was way more common.
Okay, what
But why
prevents you
doesn't
from
everybody,
ordering
just
more?
order 25% more?
If you do that, they cut you off.
I see. So they know what you typically order, and they say, okay, well, you can't order more than what your average order is, or something like that.
Some of these places automated it as well, where like they would just take you out of the equation. Like, look, this is the amount you've been ordering for the last year. This is the amount we're going to send you, and it's slightly less than the amount you've been ordering. Make it work. But again, that's not.
And
go ahead, Steve. No, go ahead.
One of the things they're doing, and I've talked to the drivers about it, a lot of restaurants get supplied overnight, and what happens is they open the door, they drop the food in the freezer, they leave. Drivers are now getting bonuses if they report people that are quote unquote hoarding chicken. So if they open up and they see that you have 1,000 pounds of chicken or 200 pounds of chicken, and I say those numbers, and to some people that sounds like a lot. On Mother's Day, we went through probably 3/4 of a ton of chicken.
Damn.
Wow. Yeah, I believe it. I mean, 100 pounds of chicken is not a lot of chicken. I mean, that's what is that? 20 whole rotisserie chickens, something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, but think about this.
And that's 20 meals.
You give a kid 4 chicken tenders. That's half a pound of chicken. And so how many orders of kids' chicken tenders do you get on Mother's Day? How many orders of kids' chicken tenders do you get on average Friday? And then, I mean, so it's not a lot of meat that we're talking about here when you're a restaurant, right? But yeah, I mean, that's how I fed myself while becoming a chef. Was I would go to my boss and be like, hey, can I have 20 pounds of chicken this week? Can I have 5 pounds of chicken this week, 10 pounds of chicken? And then on top of that, for a while, it was not uncommon that if you worked 10 hours in a kitchen, they just gave you a meal. No one's giving anybody anything anymore.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Wow. Because normally that's one of the perks of working in a restaurant is you get a decent either employee discount or you get some free food.
I will say that I work for one of the largest. Give me 1 second. Hey, I gotta go.
All right, thank you so much for the call tonight,
Thanks.
Steve. I wish I'd been able to finish hearing that statement because that's been my experience. I've worked in a
He
fair
works
bit
for a
of
corporate chain. He said that before.
Yeah.
I've worked in a fair bit of food service. The worst employee discount I ever saw at one of these places was a 50% off deal, and that was if you had worked there less than a year or something like that. I don't remember the exact specifics. There were 2 different ones. One was you only had to pay the cost of the taxes on the meal, and the other was 50%. And I don't remember what you had to do to qualify for the tax-only one, but it's certainly beneficial. I mean, at my old job, there were people who worked there just for the employee discount. And I knew people back when I was in high school who worked at Walmart for the same reason. That seems to me to be a silly reason to work somewhere, but to each their own.
When I worked at Walmart, I mean, I obviously worked there for the money, but also I loved the employee discount because it didn't count towards any food, but it was like 10% off everything else. And I already bought everything at Walmart. I was there. I just got to do my shopping right when I got off work, and 10% off is that really adds up. I thought that was nice.
That makes
sense. It's kind of
sense.
a crappy discount, but it is what it is.
If you're already shopping there.
Yeah, sure.
It's like you can buy everything you need for a bathroom,
No doubt.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get a 10% discount on almost everything you buy, it may in fact be worth it, depending on the amount of money you're making there.
And I had a good Walmart, not a Keen Walmart that has nothing on the shelves.
They used to give us 10% off at Kmart, so it's like that's kind of the standard. It's not
okay.
It's not woo. Like
no,
if
but
it was 30% off, then 25%.
Like when I worked
off.
at Sally's, it was like 10% off also. But I didn't buy everything I use in the world at Sally's. I could buy anything I need at Walmart.
I'm curious if the desire to hire more employees is causing companies, restaurants to give better, employee discounts. 603-283-6160. You can join us. There is more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Ukrainian forces say they have recaptured several villages seized by the Russians north of Kharkiv, the country's second most populous city. The capture of the villages is a big confidence boost for Ukrainian troops, though it came on the same day that pro-Russian officials in the captured city of Kherson said they plan to ask Vladimir Putin to recognize the region as part of Russian territory. Sergei Kislistya is Ukraine's ambassador to the United Nations. He says the country is bracing for a long, grinding conflict.
I know the nature and the resolve and the traditions and the mentality of Ukrainians, and it is very unfortunate that almost every intelligence in the world didn't really grasp it until the latest invasion started.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson today offered Finland and Sweden defence guarantees in the event that either country comes under Russian attack. Both are considering joining NATO in light of Moscow's aggression against Ukraine. The British leader spoke after meeting the Finnish president in Helsinki.
The Russian invasion has changed the equation of European security, and it has rewritten our reality and reshaped our future.
The US Senate is expected to approve an additional $40 billion of aid for Ukraine that has now been passed by the House of Representatives. But Democrats' efforts to enshrine abortion rights into federal law were doomed to fail after Democrat Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia announced he would not support the move. It was sparked by the Supreme Court's threat to overturn the landmark opinion that has kept abortion legal in America for 50 years. The Al Jazeera TV news network is in mourning today.
When you talk about Shireen, you talk about somebody whose presence is felt in every home and heard in every home.
Reporter Shireen Abu Akleh, an American citizen, was gunned down in the West Bank town of Jenin in the midst of ferocious clashes between Israeli troops and Palestinians. Al Jazeera says her death was an act of blatant murder by the Israelis. The Israelis say she may have been killed by Palestinian crossfire. The rate of inflation in the US slipped slightly last month to 8.3%, but that's still close to a 40-year high. On the streets of New York today, commuters were sanguine about the numbers.
The gasoline yesterday, I think I paid $4.59. Crazy.
Chicken breast is like $7, and right now it's almost $17.
What we gonna do? You gotta eat.
Jared Bernstein is a member of President Biden's Council of Economic Advisors.
This is a president that grew up in a household where when the price of gas went up, they talked about it around the kitchen table. So he is acutely aware of these challenges. And that's why he has dispatched his economic team, of which I'm a member, to do everything we can.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you are invited to join us. 603-283-6160 if you would like to take control of the airwaves. Share your thoughts and opinions at 603-283-6160. Coming up in tonight's show, we're going to be talking about Coinbase and their possible bankruptcy. Their threats to people about how, hey, look, if we go bankrupt, our users' funds might be wiped out, which is alarming for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that they should be financially solvent or financially stable enough where their users aren't likely to lose money as a result of that. But even if it's all very confusing, and we're going to need to get into that with you in the...
Oh, I was going to say, I wonder if they're at their point in their relationship with the government yet where they'll get bailed out if something bad happens to them.
Oh, that's a good point. It may be that's the angle they're trying to create here. They're trying to play that card already, get it ready for them to, hey, look, government, if you don't bail us out with X amount of money, all our users are going to lose their money. I wouldn't put it past Coinbase based on what we've seen from them in the past. However, before we get into that, we talked about it a lot last night and never actually got into it. The Shanghai lockdowns. Evidently, it's not just people being locked in their apartments. There are also people who are being locked outside, living. And this made me check the average temperature. The average temperatures in Shanghai right now, they are about 58 degrees. I think, if I recall correctly, China should be going into winter time around now. Or
no, you're thinking of
like Australia.
Or
so Northern Hemisphere is
all
the
same. I thought China was mostly Southern Hemisphere.
No, I actually looked into this earlier last year because I was like, does it snow in China? So I was Googling all this stuff, and yeah, they're Northern Hemisphere.
Oh, wow. Okay. I stand corrected that. I thought they were Southern for some reason.
And it snows in a lot of China. Like, I don't know why I never thought about it because it borders Russia.
Shanghai is in the Northern Hemisphere.
Okay. Well, that's good at least. So it's only going to get warmer there.
Yeah. Is some of China in the Southern Hemisphere?
I don't know.
That makes it kind of worse, though, that they're locking down over a cold virus in the middle of the spring while they're going into summer.
Yeah, well, an earlier story that I read when they talked about food that was spoiling, that was being delivered, they said some of the days were already hitting 80 degrees there.
It hit 80 degrees here today or close to it. And wow, that's a lot hotter than I thought it was.
Yeah, we're acclimatized to the north now because today I was like, wow, it's hot. And it was like almost 80 degrees.
Sunburned over here.
We got sunburned. We only walked around for like a half hour today.
Yeah.
So yeah, it got hot quickly. I hope the people in Shanghai are doing better, but here in New Hampshire, at least, it drops down to like 40 degrees at night. Even though it was 80 degrees today, I think it's probably going to drop down to like 52, 53 tonight. I think we're past the 40s. However...
Oh, it'll be back.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going off the frost point thing at this because I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I think the frost point is when it drops down or hits 32 degrees or below on a given night. And from what I could tell, we're well past that point. The Farmer's Almanac says May the 19th, but if you look at the weather, it's going to be fairly warm here. And I hope
that's only a week anyway.
That's true. I hope it's true for the people in Shanghai as well, because I can't imagine spending outside 80 degrees during the day and 40 degrees at night. That's not healthy for an individual to be dealing with.
And why are these people living outside?
Well, that's an interesting part of this that isn't getting talked about. Apparently, they have delivery people, who are delivering Amazon or Alibaba or whatever it is they have, or making food deliveries or whatever, and they're allowed to do that. DoorDash, basically, except in Shanghai. And once they do that, they're not allowed to go home to their families. Is that correct?
Yeah, the story's from the Wall Street Journal. We've covered a lot about Shanghai here in the last, 6 weeks or so that this lockdown has been going on there.
It has been a very long time.
They're roughly at around day number 50. Some areas have less than 50 days, but it's many, many weeks that they've been locked down. But there's a certain group of people there that are not locked down because they are out working.
They're locked out.
They're just not allowed to go home. According to Karen Hao, reporting from Shanghai, she says the lockdown has kept tens of millions of residents trapped indoors for a month and a half. Thousands of others in China's wealthiest city of, by the way, 25 million people have found...
it's huge. That's obnoxious.
Yeah, that's like the population of, Texas or Florida?
It is. I wouldn't live in a city with 25 million people. Are you kidding? Screw that.
But city people like it there until now. Thousands of others in their wealthiest city have found themselves in the opposite predicament, living in the street. Victims of the same strict COVID-19 rules that are keeping most residents homebound, many of the newly homeless are migrant laborers from rural areas and smaller cities who often live hand to mouth while sharing an apartment with other workers. For many, the companies they work for have closed down during the lockdown, including boarding up worker dormitories. Some have chosen to join the tens of thousands who zip around Shanghai on bikes or scooters for food delivery platforms like Alibaba Group's LA.me and Meituan's namesake service. So these are the equivalent of Uber Eats and, Postmates or whatever else.
So I was curious, 25 million people, how does that stack up against the biggest city I know of, New York City? Shanghai,
that's 10 million more.
Yeah, it's almost 3 times as many. According to Google, New York City has a population of about 8.38 million.
I was thinking I'd heard the number 15 when it comes to New York, and that's probably because there's that many more that come into the city from the surrounding areas during the daytime.
Oh,
kind of like how Keene is a population of Keene's where we live, by the way. It's New Hampshire, a small city. But Keene has quote-unquote 22 or 23,000 people population, but I've heard estimates that as many as 50,000 people are in the city during the day because you get a ton of people coming in from everywhere else to either go to work or go shopping. So when you factor that into New York City, you've got all the bedroom communities outside of the city itself. Tons of people are coming in there. But again, still,
I can imagine how
is
awful that rush hour traffic is.
Oh, it's terrible. That's why most people take trains. But again, Shanghai still tops that easily with 25 million people. So with the income comes the stigma of a higher COVID risk. While the Shanghai government has granted special lockdown exemption for food delivery workers, and not many other people have an exemption in Shanghai. So like if you ever I saw some footage today of a big intersection, like one of those mega city intersections in Asia.
Right, with like 14 different connecting highways.
Normally there's just a ton of cars, just a ton of people, and there's no one there except for like one little bike that goes, little motorbike that goes through. And
that's like a zombie film.
Yeah, those are the delivery people. So if you see somebody on the streets riding around, they're probably delivering food to people.
They probably have to live under a bridge right now.
That's literally what's happening, Bonnie, is they are living outdoors under bridges and wherever else they can find some form of shelter, popping up tents, things like that. So residential compounds have their own rules barring these individuals from returning to their apartments for fear they will bring the virus back with them. Now, why is that? Well, the other night on the air, Aria, I had speculated that if you get infected with COVID, and remember, they're testing people every single day in Shanghai. So
right. Lunatics twice a day, if I recall correctly. They had to do
it might depend on where, but different areas of the city. So they're calling people down from their apartments every single day to do a COVID test. And I speculated that if you failed the test, I believe that they take your entire apartment to quarantine, right? And if
it sounds like the Chinese government.
Yeah, if you think about it, it quote unquote makes sense from the insane control freak perspective, right? Like it's if they're treating this as some crazy deadly virus, then you take everybody to quarantine. Yeah. Some people are now saying, and it's not reported in this article, but there are rumors that they're taking entire apartment buildings now.
That sounds more like the Chinese Communist government, to be honest.
And have you seen any of the footage with the men in the hazmat suits spraying this whatever God knows chemical fog out of these spraying devices?
Not since early 2020, right? Because I saw it then.
Right. Well, those guys are back. And what happens if you get taken to quarantine is those dudes go into your apartment and they spray every single inch of it down, including inside the refrigerator.
What are they spraying?
Who knows what this stuff is?
603-283-6160. There's more coming up here. It is Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airwaves, talk about whatever is on your mind. Although it's unlikely, maybe you have some idea of what in the world they're spraying on people's apartments in China. Because we were just watching a video of it, and it is what we saw in the early 2020, in the early years when, like, Dr. Chen was someone who I was watching via Telegram after, I think he got kicked off of Twitter. I don't remember now, but he was spreading videos.
Probably a Chinese agent.
It would seem that, well, I don't know. It made it seem more horrifying than it was. Like the pictures of Beijing on fire. I mean, the videos of just buildings burning, large fires where you could see them burning in the distance, totally unexplained by the Chinese government. You know, what were they burning? Videos of people just walking down the street and dropping dead from COVID-19. And
allegedly.
Yeah, and just armies of people in these hazmat suits walking around spraying this cloud of something all over, everywhere out in the streets and stuff. So, and a lot of that, like people dropping dead in the streets, we now know that that wasn't actually happening. That wasn't a real thing that was going on. But there was just enough factual information in there, like the guys in the hazmat suit, that the rest of it seemed sort of reliable. But we never learned what they were spraying, and I didn't think anything about it, and then they returned. Or they may not have gone away, but...
Property rights have gone away. Because people can just go in your house now. We'll take you away from your house forcibly. Go in your house and spray your pillow down with unknown substances, and then pour all the food out of your fridge.
Well, in China, I suppose they probably could do that for a very long time, and I doubt that's new to COVID-19.
They're just doing it big time now.
Right. I mean, they've been doing it to the Uyghur Muslims for a very long time in the Xinjiang province. At least for a decade or so. I don't know exactly how long that's been going on, but it's been quite a while that I've been talking about it. And this is just the same sort of nonsense there. It's just given for a different reason and applied to a larger portion of the population. So instead of just targeting the Muslims in this one province, they're targeting everyone in every province. And they're using COVID-19 as an excuse to do it, but the result is still the same. They're taking people out of their homes. They're taking their stuff. Like the food that we saw them emptying out of the fridge, it's not going to be any good by the time that person leaves quarantine. But even if it was, they're probably throwing that food in the trash or in the dumpster or in a fire or something. They're not putting it aside for safekeeping to be returned to this person.
Nope.
And they're probably not doing that with a lot of their belongings. It seems superfluous to me that they would. It's actually shocking to me that the Chinese government would even take the time to spray down people's pillows and blankets instead of just taking them and tossing them into the dumpster. That's what I would expect from the Chinese government.
Yeah, and burn them or something.
Well, even the army and other parts, the people who are part of the government, but they're the strong arms of the government, they have to have these little stupid things they have to do because they're also under like mind control. They have to be doing things so they feel like they're doing something important. That's like what the army does all day, every day. They go do dumb little silly tasks. Like my mom, when she was in the army, she was getting paid by the army to go out and pick up cigarette butts for like 8 hours a day in the parking lots of the place she worked. And it's just like, it's part of mind control. Like you are a controller and you are also controlled.
That entire job, whose person was just picking up cigarette butts?
My mom.
Wow. Did not know that. We have Sarah on the line from New Mexico. Sarah, you're on Free Talk Live.
Oh, yes. I just heard on the radio news today that they actually surveyed the drivers of what they want in their new cars. So the
Who surveyed them?
I really don't know. I don't know what I guess the car manufacturers or automobile people or whoever.
So what did they want? What were the big results of the survey?
Okay, so the big result of the survey, the result was that they wanted what I want, what I always talk about, the automatic sensor brakes in the front and the back, because they ran over
brakes?
Sensor brakes. Automatic sensor.
If I understand correctly, and Sarah, I'm probably more accurate than you are because I don't think you've ever driven a car. What this is one of the cameras that are watching the front of the vehicle for a deer or whatever, and it automatically hits the brakes for you if it detects movement.
It's probably
and then they also got one in the back.
We've seen
also.
And
then also they have a camera, like it's like the dump truck. They got like 6 cameras inside the drivers could watch. They have the cameras in the back, cameras in the side. So when you're backing up, you don't have a blind spot. So they're going to have that.
Or you could just turn around and look like a responsible adult. The issue with backing up, Sarah, is that people use their side view mirrors and their rear view mirrors instead of just turning their necks to see.
Yeah.
I've almost gotten hit by people backing out of parking spots, and I'm kind of hard to miss. And it's not the fault of vehicle manufacturers or anything like that. No, it's the idiot behind the wheel who didn't even bother to turn their head.
Yeah, there's this time.
That's not good enough. That is not good enough. Do you know how many
It is good enough. If you actually drive,
that they got run over, and the small dogs that got run over,
Bonnie, what were you about to say?
I was going to say, one time, me and this other car both were backing out next, like butt to butt, and we just barely tapped each other. And I swear, like, I had looked, I just didn't see these people. And I got out and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I exchanged my information with them. I don't think I said sorry because I was trained not to say that, but I really did feel bad that I missed them. And they said, don't you have a backup camera? It was like two old people.
Yeah.
But the thing was, they had a backup camera and they still hit me because they were relying on their backup camera. I was just like, no, I don't. I was looking, but I didn't see you. They were relying on their backup camera.
That's a great question. You could have just asked them, don't you?
And of course, I didn't think of it in that moment. I thought of it later.
That's often how it goes, though. I mean, no biggie there.
Well, and then they have also the keeping the cars in the lane so it doesn't weave, and also they have the cruise control.
Oh, good. Then I can get hammered and just drive myself home, right?
So what you're saying is, Sarah, people don't want to drive anymore. They want machines to do it for them. They want automated systems. They want something to save them from having to think about when to brake. They want to save themselves from having to keep themselves in the lane.
Seriously, when I went back to San Antonio this September, and I came back just like saying living in a big city is like living in a big arcade game or something. That's how I seriously feel. People want to sleep their way through life, literally. They want to be driven around the city, which is just a big video game, fun time. They want food to show up at their house. They just want to sit there on a machine that entertains them, directly pumps serotonin into their brain. And it just made me realize how, I don't know, empty life is living in a city once I had been away from it for a while.
Sir, you realize the implications of that, right? What you're talking about here is a vehicle that will automatically brake for me and that will keep me from weaving in between the lanes. That's just encouraging people to drunk drive.
Well, I mean,
because those are like the two biggest concerns of drunk drivers is one, they're too drunk to have a proper reaction time to hit their brakes, and two, they can't even see straight and they're constantly swerving in between lanes.
Right.
Well, these features give them the ability to drink and drive.
Okay. Well, maybe that they can get away with doing all this stuff. I mean, they're going to have the automatic alcohol detection system where the car's not even going to start at all. They're going to shoot out laser to detect it senses the gases that
Kill
are
the people
released
if
from
they
your
smell it.
perspiration.
She's right. They are planning this. They're planning on putting in automatic by 2026, they're planning on putting in some form of newfangled alcohol detection into every new vehicle.
I wonder how easy it is to, put that into a survey results and just be like, yep, so we surveyed people and what they want is blood alcohol detectors and self-driving cars.
No, I don't think that's what people actually want. I don't think they want BAC detectors. That's what the government wants to force on them.
Yeah, so they could easily fake a survey.
I believe the results are true about people not wanting to drive. I think it's true that they would rather do something else, sit on their phones or play a video game.
But you know what's great about this, Sarah? If this is what these people want, they can save up money and buy the cars that are like that. And everybody else can buy cars that were left alone because they want to be left alone, right? Or does the government need to make it to where everybody has to have these kind of cars in your worldview, Sarah?
Well, we know what her answer is going to be.
Well, I mean, it's just going to be mandatory. It's going to be built in. I mean, it's not going to be. It's like a seatbelt. You don't get a car like I want one with no seatbelt. You know,
you can in New Hampshire.
My Eclipse doesn't have any of that nonsense.
Well, so far, but I'm talking about all the cars that are going to come out.
Twitch chat, Steve Rusnick, who says that backup cams have been standard for a decade. Apparently, now I've never bought a new car, so I can't speak to that, but it sounds
I guess
like
it is 2022. Well, no, my 2013 Subaru Forester did not have backup cams.
Sarah, thank you so much for the call tonight. I've never owned a car that had rear-facing cameras. I've rented a few, and it's nice, but it's no substitute for just turning your head.
It's just another thing that's going to break.
Yeah, and they're kind of annoying. They beep when they really shouldn't. There's more coming up here. It's Free Talk Live.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Ukrainian forces say they have recaptured several villages seized by the Russians north of Kharkiv, the country's second most populous city. The capture of the villages is a big confidence boost for Ukrainian troops, though it came on the same day that pro-Russian officials in the captured city of Kherson said they plan to ask Vladimir Putin to recognize the region as part of Russian territory. Sergei Kislistya is Ukraine's ambassador to the United Nations. He says the country is bracing for a long, grinding conflict.
I know the nature and the resolve and the traditions and the mentality of Ukrainians. And it is very unfortunate that almost every intelligence in the world didn't really grasp it until the latest invasion started.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson today offered Finland and Sweden defence guarantees in the event that either country comes under Russian attack. Both are considering joining NATO in light of Moscow's aggression against Ukraine. The British leader spoke after meeting the Finnish president in Helsinki.
The Russian invasion has changed the equation of European security, and it has rewritten our reality and reshaped our future.
The US Senate is expected to approve an additional $40 billion of aid for Ukraine that has now been passed by the House of Representatives. But Democrats' efforts to enshrine abortion rights into federal law were doomed to fail after Democrat Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia announced he would not support the move. It was sparked by the Supreme Court's threat to overturn the landmark opinion that has kept abortion legal in America for 50 years. The Al Jazeera TV news network is in mourning today.
When you talk about Shireen, you talk about somebody whose presence is felt in every home and heard in every home.
Reporter Shireen Abu Akleh, an American citizen, was gunned down in the West Bank town of Jenin in the midst of ferocious clashes between Israeli troops and Palestinians. Al Jazeera says her death was an act of blatant murder by the Israelis. The Israelis say she may have been killed by Palestinian crossfire. The rate of inflation in the US slipped slightly last month to 8.3%, but that's still close to a 40-year high. On the streets of New York today, commuters were sanguine about the numbers.
The gasoline yesterday, I think I paid $4.59. It's crazy.
Chicken breast is like $7, and right now it's almost $17.
What we gonna do? You gotta eat.
Jared Bernstein is a member of President Biden's Council of Economic Advisors.
This is a president that grew up in a household where when the price of gas went up, they talked about it around the kitchen table. So he is acutely aware of these challenges. And that's why he has dispatched his economic team, of which I'm a member, to do everything we can.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, John Lee, the man who is suddenly centre stage in Hong Kong. Earlier this week, he became the city's new chief executive after running the only campaign approved for the post by the Chinese government. Previously the chief secretary for administration, he was the second highest ranked official in Hong Kong. And before that, he enjoyed a 40-year career, starting in the police force but eventually becoming its deputy chief. Analyst Bob McMahon of the New York-based Council on Foreign Relations says those qualifications worry many observers.
John Lee was a strong supporter of the, you may recall, the China extradition bill. That was actually lifted, but it had sparked protests in 2019. But because of his support, John Lee's support for that bill, he was sanctioned by the U.S. in 2020, and also for his role in curtailing political freedoms. His position is an incredibly tough one. The best case scenario is seen as a technocrat who trying to restore this sort of stature of Hong Kong as a financial hub. He's saying, I'm going to get the economy back going again. It's notable he does not have the economic background that previous chief executives have had. And so that's raised some concern in the fact that he's had this security profile has raised a lot of concern that he's going to be doing Beijing's bidding on further cracking down on security.
Mr. Lee also has the pandemic to contend with, not only the ongoing threat of infections, but the brain drain sparked in Hong Kong by previous lockdowns. The main news again, Ukrainian forces say they've recaptured several villages seized by the Russians north of Kharkiv, the country's second most populous city. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson today offered Finland and Sweden defence guarantees in the event that either country comes under Russian attack. And Al Jazeera is accusing Israeli forces of the blatant murder of reporter Shireen Abu Akleh, gunned down today in the West Bank town of Jenin. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
According to a new report released this week by the Pew Research Center, a rising number of weak, emasculated men are working as stay-at-home dads, with a steadily increasing number of feeble, pathetic fayboys choosing to spend their days cooking, cleaning, and performing other submissive duties.
Well, our findings indicate that more and more pussified half-men are not going to work, and instead are embarrassing themselves by purchasing groceries, packing children's lunches, and denying all aspects of their masculinity on a daily basis.
The Onion spoke to one of these effete, pathetic excuses for men to get his response on the new report.
I love being able to stay home with Angela. I mean, it's a lot of work, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
What a f***ing pussy. For more on this story, check this week's Onion Review.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can take control of the airwaves and talk about whatever you want. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in. Again, that's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And we're talking about Shanghai here, who is entering into day 50 of a 5-day lockdown. I actually don't know what day it is.
It depends on where you are in the city. Some areas, not as many as 50 days, but certainly many areas over 30 days.
I certainly like saying day 50 of a 5-day lockdown, though, because that's what that's what they were told, right? Was that this is going to be I think they said 3 to 5 days, or it was 4 days in the beginning.
4 or 5 days, yeah.
And now they're on well more than a month of this, no matter where in the city they're at.
They're not going to stop until they get to, quote-unquote, zero COVID.
And that's not going to happen. They've never been at zero COVID, have they?
I mean, who could possibly be at zero COVID?
Since COVID came out, have they ever been at at zero COVID?
And this is a city with 25 million people just shut down economically. No production, very little, significantly diminished production. As we talked about, there are still factories open and stuff like that because people were evidently given the option of, hey, you can stay here at your factory, you just can't go home at night.
Well, no one is able to. So apparently what I read from another person, I was reading quite a bit about it today. One lady says that if your entire apartment building tests clear for 14 days, then you might be allowed out. Now, I don't know if it's just the apartment building or if it's like the whole city block, but there's some amount of property. If everybody there tests clear of COVID for 14 days straight.
That's horrible.
Then they will let you out.
That's just a way of turning neighbors against each other because, you're on day 12, but your neighbor tested positive. Bonnie tested positive, so now you've all...
But then the timer
timer's
resets.
restarting.
Yep, then the timer resets.
Yeah,
They
get her out of here. Just take her to the camp.
Yeah, suddenly they're lining up to throw you out the door.
Rumors have it that
It's
some
horrifying.
places have had entire apartment complexes taken to the camps, but that hasn't been verified. But what we were talking about is the
Well, if
other
it saves
side.
even one life, Ian.
Well, there's people jumping out of their apartments.
If
to their
people
doom.
jumping out of buildings to their doom saves just one life,
There's
Ian.
fires starting in apartment complexes where they're gated in and can't leave.
Well, if
That's
people
happening too.
burning to death saves just one life,
Oh my God.
That's the insanity of this.
It is.
So we've talked a lot about the people trapped inside, but what about the people who are trapped on the outside? The delivery workers who have chosen to, hey, I want to keep making money during this lockdown. Because everybody that's locked down, they still have to pay rent. Okay, so they still have to pay for the food that they're receiving if it's over and above whatever government
I like
handouts.
this. If you sleep under a bridge, you don't owe rent to anyone.
Well, many of them might still have an apartment. They're just not allowed back into
Oh my God.
the apartment.
And it was a joke. I and most people would rather pay rent than live under a bridge.
Well, but I was thinking about this because when Ian first told me about this, I was like, wait, they're allowing people to do Uber Eats or whatever, whatever Chinese equivalent. And maybe it is Uber Eats, I don't know, but... And I was like, how are they letting people do that? I thought everybody's locked down. So are you talking about just like some places aren't locked down? He said, no, they're not letting them back in so that way they don't spread COVID. So those people are having to like live outside. And I was thinking, would I rather be trapped in an apartment? They killed my dog. I'm just in my apartment with my Animal Crossing on my DS and nothing else, barely getting food. Or would I rather just live outside and be able to go places and walk around and breathe fresh air?
It would depend on the time of year, honestly.
Oh, that's true.
During spring, right now, sure. If you gave me the option of, okay, you can live under this bridge here in Keene, and you can, maintain employment, delivering food to people, or you can stay locked in your house for X amount of days and hopefully get let out at the end. I think at this time of year, I would choose the latter. Or the former. I would rather just be outside.
Yeah, I don't know how these people are like bathing or anything like that. Sounds really awful. But seriously, being trapped in your apartment without the ability to leave at all sounds really freaking horrible to me.
Well, luckily we live in New Hampshire, and we actually have a large community of people who doesn't like to do what the government tells them to do. So when the stay-at-home order, quote unquote, happened here, we went out and threw a party right in the center of downtown Keene. But the Chinese people don't have that same mentality.
I was going to say that gives me my segue to my unpopular opinion about this entire situation. My whole opinion about this is the Chinese people asked for this for years and years and years. Maybe if you're like 20 or younger, you had no choice and it's just like you grew up and you got out of the house and then this suddenly happened to you. If you're like 21 or older, you have lived at a time where you could have moved out of China. I don't know. I feel like you asked for this.
I don't know. I read We Have Been Harmonized recently. I read most of it. After about halfway through, the book starts taking on this just viciously anti-Chinese rant. And I would expect this from a former Chinese dissident, but the point that they're trying to make gets lost in the anti-Chinese rants at that point. But the first half is really good. And the point one of the points that it made was that the younger people in China, the people who are raised in there, that they don't know that there exists an outside world where there's freedom or more freedom or things like that. And it's not necessarily because of like the Great Firewall of China, which is the firewall essentially that's limiting their access to the internet. It's more the Chinese Communist Party. They knew what they were doing 50 years ago when they seized control. The people who are being born and raised today and, 2 decades ago or 3 decades ago, they legitimately don't have the curiosity to learn about what even is beyond the Great Firewall of China. So it's not that,
it's government education.
Yeah, they're not scared of getting busted looking at things they're not supposed to see, looking at this thing called freedom of the press and freedom of association. They're not scared. They're just legitimately not curious about it because that's been beaten out of them.
I have heard that too, but maybe my age cutoff is too young, but I'm at least starting back when China, back with the oldest people who are alive, they asked for this. And the people of China are partially responsible. You can't just be a human being and not inherently want
say the same
to
thing
know
about
about
Americans.
freedom.
And
I do say the same thing about Americans. I had that whole article I brought in saying, like, people need to stop saying that the elites are controlling them. It's completely the people's fault that they're under mind control.
And also in China, I mean, if you leave and you don't come back, they may just throw your entire family in prison or kill them. I mean, there's also been stories about that. Oh, your cousin over there is doing a lot of international travel. We need your cousin to return home immediately. And if you don't, your entire family disappears.
Wow.
And those are North Korean tactics. And yeah, we have heard about those being employed in China as well. So, short on money and connections to find alternate lodging, these delivery workers have bought simple tents or slept under bridges with only a bed sheet or a blanket for protection. One rider who asked only to be identified by his surname, Wang, said he arrived in Shanghai on March 5th after delivering food in another city with hopes of making more money in the prosperous financial hub. On April 1st, the residential compound where he was living was locked down and wouldn't let him leave for more than 3 weeks. On April 24th, he restarted delivery work, which he described as his only means of survival. That meant going from being locked in his compound to being locked out, and he began living under bridges. Other food delivery workers also described gathering under any bridges they could find to avoid the wind and rain, and one worker said he shared a bridge with more than 30 people, most of whom ran deliveries like him. Wang said, quote, "How many people can understand our situation? Our suffering is real, but difficult to explain." Unquote. In recent weeks, the local government says...
No, homelessness it's very simple to explain for most people. I mean, you're homeless. That sucks. You're exposed to the elements. You got nowhere.
Well, he has a home. You just can't go to it.
Maybe it's hard for him
He's
to
effectively homeless.
explain to other people who literally don't don't have the vocabulary and stuff to talk about freedom because of what Arya was saying about them completely losing their curiosity and such ideas.
The government, though, has stepped up its efforts to support the roughly 20,000 delivery drivers in Shanghai. Officials have coordinated with hotels and other institutions to create driver service stations to provide mattresses, meals, and a place to charge their devices. So there you go. The government's helping out by giving them a mattress.
I was curious about the charging their devices because I don't know how these apps work in China, but in the United States, if you want to do DoorDash or Uber Eats or whatever, you need the app for that.
Of course.
It's going to require you to charge your phone. And I don't know what it's like in Shanghai, but I imagine most of the Uber drivers in New York City are using bicycles or are walking on foot or something and not actually driving vehicles. 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. There's more coming up here about Shanghai and other things that are happening in the world, like the Vicky White thing I want to talk about. This is escaped inmate in Alabama and the guard who helped him escape. There's a lot more to this than meets the eye. It is Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover springs her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com. Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. It's bitcoin.com.
This is novelist Tom Robbins. When my mother was diagnosed with glaucoma, her conservative Virginia physician told her there was only one treatment that might ease her pain and save her eyesight. That treatment was medical marijuana, which he could not prescribe. I offered to get her some and teach her how to use it effectively, but my father objected because marijuana was against the law. So my mother, who loved to read and walk in nature, was condemned to grow cruelly, unnecessarily blind. Tragedies like this happen all the time, but they don't have to keep happening. To learn more about medical marijuana, call the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can take control of the airwaves. Share your thoughts and opinions. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Bonnie.
Talking about Shanghai here and what's going on over there. It's significantly worse than anything that did happen, as far as I'm aware, here in the United States. But that doesn't mean that these things that we're hearing about out of Shanghai and China, these are the progressive leftist fantasies, basically what we're hearing about coming out here. Zero COVID. We have to lock down to protect the elderly, to protect the weak, what is the word they use?
Immunocompromised?
Yes, that's it. The immunocompromised. If they wanted to, they absolutely would have done this sort of thing here where we have to get cases down to zero to keep people safe. And then you end up with people jumping out of buildings and burning to death in their homes.
I think that they wanted to do anything they could possibly do. The government wanted to, but people here actually have a little bit of like an idea that an idea of what freedom is, and they own guns. Like, They don't own guns at all in China.
But San Francisco is known for being one of the most locked down cities in the United States. I mean, they still would let you out.
Still wasn't as locked down as China.
That's true. You could still go to the grocery store, but not much else.
And that's not a whole lot.
I'm not even saying in the United States everyone just did great and was standing up for liberty in every aspect. I'm just saying that they pushed as far as they could possibly push in 2020.
They did.
They couldn't push us as far as they could push Australians. They could push them further because in the 90s they gave up, or 2007 or something like that, they gave up guns.
I hear that a lot, but I'm not sold on that argument. I don't think it's the fear of guns. I think it's that once you get people to the point where they're willing to give up their right to defend themselves, it's a lot easier to get them to give up other rights as well. I don't think that, it's the fact that we have guns that kept the United States government at bay. I think it was our willingness to stand up for our right to have guns. Even if the average American had no guns, like even if there were no guns in the United States, as long as that was a choice that people had made to not have firearms, I don't think we would have gotten to this point. It's people being willing to stand up for their rights, whatever those rights are.
I don't know. A lot of people in the United States are literally at the point where they think other people should not be allowed to have guns. They think Kyle Rittenhouse should have just let a mob kill him instead of shooting at people because guns evil.
And a lot of those people live in big cities like New York City and San Francisco where you basically can't own a gun. So we do have places in the United States that do not have access to guns for the average person. And those are the places
where it was worse.
Yeah, where you got more restrictions. So I think there's something to what Bonnie's saying here. And I think that the people that are, but on the other hand, when you see like in Connecticut a few years back when they started regulating guns more heavily there, they had lines of people willing to turn in their illegal magazines and such. Remember, I think they took down the ammo count to 10 per magazine. And so then if you had a magazine that was like more than 10, it would become a prohibited item.
I do think it is what Arya is saying, though. It's that they want to take away people's guns because it's a psychological effect on top of the fact that people won't have guns to defend themselves. Because, I guess they could bomb us if they really wanted to.
I think that for all the talk about guns in America, I think that the resistance is basically an inch thick. And there's really not that much of it out there. Most people are very obedient and they will do what they're told. Because remember, your typical gun owner loves to talk about how law-abiding they are. Oh, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm a law-abiding gun owner, which means that
you kind of have to, because the government really likes charging people with
no doubt
not properly having their guns licensed or
and
whatever.
I don't think violence is the solution myself. I think that mass civil disobedience and mass non-cooperation is how you really bring the system to a grinding halt. But that said, I don't see most of the people who are into guns being disobedient in any way, shape, or form. I think they'll do exactly what they're told to do.
And a lot of people say, oh, if the FBI shows up at my house, I have a gun. But they don't realize that they just suddenly are in your bedroom and you're just waking up. You
and
really
there's
don't have
50
time.
of them.
And if you get your gun from your bedside and stand up and get into the hallway at the same time as them, they kill you immediately. So
there are a lot of misconceptions that people have. I mean, but that's true of everyone, right? Everyone's like, oh, if someone came up to me on the streets and they tried to rob me, I would just, break their wrist and take their gun and do some kung fu on them. That it's silly to us because we've dealt with some real world situations, but there are absolutely people out there who's like, man, if somebody came up to me on the streets and tried to rob me, I would kung fu them to death. And they probably genuinely believe that they would kung fu the guy to death. And they genuinely believe that, if the cops broke into if the FBI raided me, they'd find me there with opening fire on them. No, they wouldn't, dude. And they know that. Mm-hmm. That's not the way any of this works. That's why they hit you at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? When you're sleeping. Because no one's thinking, oh, God, I'm being invaded by the FBI. That's a lot of information to process immediately. And for your gut reaction to be, okay, they're shouting FBI, I need to go get my guns. That's not the reaction any sane, rational human being is going to have.
Well, I think they do.
Like kids running around.
I think they do late night raids like that, not only to keep people off guard, but secondly, to encourage them to shoot because it's in the middle of the night. You've got somebody banging on your front door, possibly busting in.
Yeah, my first thought was a kid threw something through our window.
Right, but there are some people that live in like bad neighborhoods, right? Or
sure.
not
No,
so
I mean
good
a
areas.
bad kid. Like I thought somebody was like nobody said he thought that there was an angry mob outside. I thought there was a bunch of crazy kids breaking into our house to like hurt us.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say, like, if somebody wakes up in the middle of you're in a dead sleep and all of a sudden you hear destructive noises in your house and shouting, you might think that there's a gang coming in to attack you, rape your wife, could kidnap your kids or whatever, and you might just come out blasting without even assessing the situation because you're just so scared or so out of it or whatever. I think they count on that because they want to fight. They want to have you use
That's why
violence.
they yell FBI, though.
Well, they claim they
criminals.
do. Sometimes they probably don't.
So do average criminals. They'll pretend to be the police in a home invasion.
Yeah, there's also been times where they just went into the wrong house and somebody got in a situation where they shot back at a police and now they're in court over it. And they claim that the people will claim that they didn't announce themselves and the police officers will be like, yeah, we did. And then,
That very thing happened almost where I'm from in Mississippi, where the one county was serving a warrant allegedly on behalf of another county. It turns out the other county had nothing to do with it, but they were trying to push the blame onto someone else. Where they went to the wrong address. They shot a Hispanic man in the back of the head as he was turning to return to his bedroom while they were at the wrong place.
Wow.
And of course, there was never any accountability for that. And they weren't even at the right place. They didn't have a warrant to search his home. They didn't have any right to take him into custody. And he's dead. Yep. Because of that. And they'll never face it. There have been countless examples of this, of them throwing flashbangs into cribs with infants and shooting up Breonna Taylor, I think her name. There's so many, it's hard to keep track of all of their names, but Breonna Taylor, I believe, her apartment wasn't even being raided. She was just in an apartment complex with someone who was being raided, and the police fired a stray round that killed her boyfriend or killed her. I don't remember now. But they're constantly...
There's no shortage of trigger-happy cops. Just today, there's video that's come out from Las Cruces, New Mexico, where a 75-year-old grandmother is shot to death by police. She allegedly is, a sufferer of dementia and was holding a knife, but...
Yeah, but she's a 75-year-old lady.
Right.
You could not possibly overpower her without shooting her in the middle of the night.
And don't most cops have non-lethal items on their belt? I'm pretty sure they do in almost every department I've seen in recent years. They're not just issued a gun, but yet this guy blasts this woman away when he obviously could have gone for pepper spray or a taser.
603-283-6160 if you want to weigh on the police brutality. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Ukraine's armed forces say they have pushed Russians out of villages they had seized north of the city of Kharkiv, the country's second largest population center. Reporter Lee Rainey is with the Kyiv Post.
They've taken about 4 or 5 communities. They're pushing the Russian forces back. It moves the Russian artillery out of range of the city itself. Also, it allows the Ukrainian armed forces better positions to attack the supply lines for the Russian forces that are invading Severodonetsk, which is the sort of government-held capital of the Luhansk region.
Amid concerns about other possible Russian aggression, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Swedish Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson earlier signed a bilateral security agreement that will see Britain coming to Sweden's defense in the event that the country comes under attack. Passengers traveling by plane within the European Union should no longer be subject to mandatory mask-wearing rules, according to new guidance issued by EU aviation and disease control authorities. The new recommendations will apply from May 16th, though will vary based on flight destinations. FSN's Rosie Beerchard reports from Brussels.
Masking up may soon be a thing of the past for passengers on board planes in the European Union. The EU's Disease Control Agency says the move to relax recommendations is based on widespread uptake of COVID-19 vaccines within the bloc, as well as naturally acquired immunity. The guidance, which takes effect on the 16th of May, still stipulates that masks should be worn on flights bound for destinations where face coverings are required on public transportation. And Agency Chief Andrea Amann says masks remain one of the best methods for reducing the spread of COVID-19. The head of the EU's aviation safety body says it's a relief to have reached a stage of the pandemic at which his agency can relax guidance for flights within the bloc. Rosie Burchard, Brussels.
Families of the victims in the collapse of a Florida condominium have reached a settlement to resolve wrongful death claims. The settlement, which includes insurance companies, developers, and other defendants, comes nearly a year after the tragedy killed 98 people. FSN's Rachel Silverman has details.
It was a surprise development as lawyers announced a settlement of just under $1 billion. The judge in the case said he was shocked. $997 million was far in excess of what he had anticipated. Plaintiffs argued that the poor construction and maintenance of Champlain Tower South turned catastrophic with the development of a new luxury tower next door. Among the 98 victims were young children, elderly couples, longtime residents, families, and tourists staying in the building. Rachel Silverman, San Francisco.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and you're invited to take control of the airwaves. 603-283-6160 if you would like to do that. Again, that's 603-283-6160. I have a story here that, I've been watching it sort of for the last few days. It's actually been in my show prep for the last few days because it hasn't been mentioned here, and I kept seeing it pop up, and I was just like, okay, that's not interesting, that's not interesting, that's not interesting. And then finally I clicked, and I was like, there's actually a lot more to this than I would have thought, and that is the Officer Vicky White, who helped an inmate out of, I think, Alabama, I don't remember now, we'll get into it, escape custody. But before that,
escape from prison?
Yes.
Wow.
But before that, one of the advertisements here that I'm finding at MSNBC or CNN.com is for the Goldback, surprisingly enough.
Yeah, I get Goldback ads all over the place because...
I know targeting advertisement, I know that that's a thing, but I'm still surprised to even see it.
Even the studio computer is listening to us.
Well, I would expect the studio computer to be listening. So anyway, former Alabama correction officer Vicky White, she was fired after she helped this guy, escape, has died from injuries after she and escaped inmate...
She's dead?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
From a self-inflicted gunshot in the head. Like I said, there's a lot more to this story than they're running headlines like, Alabama corrections officer has died in hospital. Like, hold on here, because there's a lot here that you didn't talk about in these headlines. And they've been doing this for the last several days. So, yeah, she did. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. She was hospitalized earlier with self-inflicted gunshot wounds after being taken into custody following a car chase in Indiana. U.S. Marshals told CNN her wounds were very serious, one marshal said at the time. No law enforcement officers fired shots, according to the sheriff of Alabama, where the pair fled on April the 29th. Now, this is Casey White was the inmate, the man, and Vicky White is the woman.
No relation.
There is no relation as the media, and they point out, they're not related. They share the same last name, but they're not related.
Like as in familial, but they claim that they're married.
Well, he refers to her as his wife.
Okay.
Before the chase ensued, officers conducting surveillance spotted Vicky White exiting a hotel with a wig on, according to U.S. Marshal Marty Keeley. Then she and Casey White got into a car and drove away. Authorities continued to watch them until a vehicular pursuit began, ending when a Marshals Task Force member drove a vehicle into the Cadillac that the pair were in. The car wrecked and rolled over. Casey White was driving the car, although someone else had reported earlier incorrectly that Vicky was the driver, apparently. Officers were able to remove the inmate from the wrecked car, but Vicky White was pinned inside with a gunshot wound to her head.
Wow.
Damn.
So he's back in custody now?
Yes.
Wow.
Damn.
So Casey reportedly told officers to help, quote, his wife, who had shot herself in the head, according to the U.S. Marshal, and he insisted that he didn't do it. Keeley said, to their knowledge, Casey White and Vicky White are not married. Seems unlikely to me.
It is a pretty common last name. What if they're like lovers who met each other that just happen to have the same last name?
That's also possible. I tend to think that, I don't know. I don't know how they ended up with the same last name, how she ended up overseeing his prison and entering into a relationship with him and helping him escape.
Yeah.
There are so many questions here that they're just not talking about. The pair's capture brought to close an 11-day manhunt that gained widespread national attention and saw hundreds of tips flood in from all corners of the country, including... Yeah.
It's got to be hard to pull off a relationship with an inmate, but you do hear stories about it from time to time. I remember when I was in jail in Westmoreland here in New Hampshire years ago.
That was the old jail, yeah.
The old jail. There was a rumor about one of the guards that was allegedly having sex with inmates, and there's a lot of jail rumors out there, right? But and purportedly, she'd somehow sneak him into a broom closet or something like that. Like, it's got to be tricky because there's literally cameras everywhere in these facilities, and there are men whose job it is to monitor them constantly.
Yeah, but what is the word? Collegiate. What's the word where you ignore something because you're also a cop?
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that could be what's going on here, or maybe she did the camera guy a favor too, and that's why he looked the other way. But
it could also be that she worked like a swing shift, or a graveyard shift or something like that, where
there aren't as many people around.
Yeah, I don't know how jails work, but I know in surveillance at a lot of places, unless you're at like a casino or one of these places with like hundreds of employees, there's probably no one actively monitoring the cameras. They're probably just recording.
No, there's usually one guy, as I understand it.
I'm thinking of like Walmart on graveyard shift. They don't have someone there watching their camera
No, this
feeds.
is different because the person who's monitoring the cameras is also probably the person who's releasing locks on doors, right?
But there's not a lot of that on a graveyard shift.
They've always got to have somebody to be able to open and close doors. I mean, it's a maximum security environment. So
good point. Yeah.
Whenever you have to go from, I mean, you're right, Arya, that there's not as many prisoners that are obviously out of their cell at that time, but there are still agents that have to go from point A to point B or whatever, and
they have to leave one wing to go to another wing and stuff like that.
And they don't give the agent, like, it's not like your typical bureaucracy where they have some sort of a little key card that they can just hold up to the door, because then obviously an inmate could overpower that person and get the key card and start walking around. So even the people who work there, they have to stand at the door and wait until whoever it is that's at the control panel can actually unlock a door and let them out of the place.
Wow, but are all prisons maximum security?
Well, that's not max security. That's more like minimum security. I mean, that's what you see in county jails and stuff like that.
No, these county jails are considered maximum security environments. They're just not. They're not lockdown. Okay, so when I say that, what I mean is they are maximum security in that they still have day rooms and things like that. So it's not like a total lockdown environment for the entire prison. But when I say maximum security, I mean there's an outdoor area, quote unquote, but it's completely walled in. Right. You cannot go actually into the outdoors. So there's very restrictive. It's a very restrictive environment in these county jails here.
So this step, not wedding, because this story couldn't get any more bizarre than the fact that this man and woman share the same last name. They hooked up while he was a prisoner in an Alabama jail, and the sheriff who oversaw this incident where they were finally arrested has the last name of Wedding, which I didn't catch before now. Said the duo were believed to have been in Evansville since May the 3rd. It's hard to believe they've been here that many days, but we're lucky that we stumbled upon them today. He said that, or Singleton, who's some other random person who they didn't mention, said that Casey will be brought back to Alabama. That's the 38-year-old inmate. He faces previous murder charges. So when you say snitches, Bonnie.
I didn't think that.
Yeah, I was going. We got off onto the subject of what jail is like and stuff like that, but I don't want to blame someone for calling the cops on someone who has killed someone else. Sure, snitching is bad, but if this person's out there killing people, at some point you gotta call someone to do something about it, or have a vigilante society or something.
Just to clarify, he's awaiting sentencing, or hasn't even gotten sentenced for.
It seems he's awaiting sentencing.
Wow.
Vicky White, 56.
Now he's got an escape charge too.
Yeah, well, his wife or girlfriend or whoever, it was first charged with permitting or facilitating escape in the first degree and was later facing additional forgery and identity theft charges.
And presumably that's why she killed herself, because she didn't want to go. She works in these places.
Well, also her car flipped over. She might have been just holding a gun, right?
Well, she's facing forgery.
She had a gunshot to the head.
Yeah, but she was holding a gun in a car that flipped. She might have accidentally shot herself.
I want to know about these forgery and identity theft charges.
Maybe she used that somehow to get him out.
Well, that's what I'm starting to think, is that was her real name even Vicky White? Or does she just assume that identity that belonged to someone else and forges the documents and steal their identity? She stole someone's identity, evidently, and committed forgery. Well, allegedly. And allegedly committed forgery. Wow. There's a lot here that they're not talking about. And, man, it's a curious story. There's more coming up about it, though. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in. Not to even mention the horrifying things this sheriff plans to do with this guy. It's Free Talk Live.
Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's It's Free Talk Live. And if you wanted to call in, you're going to have to wait till tomorrow night, unfortunately. 603-283-6160, though. I didn't mean to get off at the number again because it's kind of pointless, especially right after I said that. However, you can join us in the meantime on our social media server at social.freetalklive.com. That's where you'll find us when we're not here on the show. Well, oftentimes when we are doing the show, that's social.freetalklive.com. It's a social media server that we own, that we control. You don't have to worry about Twitter or Facebook or whoever deciding that, hey, that's a little bit too much free speech for you. We need to scale that back a bit. Over at social.freetalklive.com, you are free to actually express your opinions. We're talking here about Casey White and Vicky White, and I want to share with you what this sheriff says, the Alabama sheriff who oversees, presumably, the jail that Casey White is going to be spending his time in. He will be in a cell by himself. He will stay in handcuffs and shackles while he's in that cell.
Damn.
And if he wants to sue me for violating his rights, so be it.
Holy crap.
That's how these tyrannical monsters react.
Yeah, what a piece of crap.
When someone slips through their fingers, when they find someone who doesn't just bow to their authority, who challenges their supremacy. That we saw the same thing from Bukele. I don't think it was Bukele. It was the other guy. It was someone else who said something. The other cryptocurrency. Well, I guess it was Bukele.
Who has
the gang issues?
The president of El Salvador.
The gang issues, yep.
Yeah, they have the gang. I don't know why.
He's been talking tough.
He said they won't need another crumb of food if
Yeah, it's all
people keep complaining.
Statists who are upset that their supremacy is being challenged.
They can't literally control the whole world.
The sheriff says, I've always expected this outcome. I knew we would catch them. It was just a matter of time. No, it was just a matter of stupidity, honestly. They had 11 days, it sounds like, and they only made it from Alabama to Indiana instead of to Mexico or somewhere that would have made a lot more sense. Now, Mexico would have been closer, and it would have been a lot harder for the sheriffs or the U.S. Marshals to find them in Mexico.
You're right. Were they trying to go to Canada? That would have been a lot dumber.
I think they were honestly just stupid enough to think that we could throw on a wig and live out here and we'll be fine. Maybe that's where the identity theft and the forgery came from, because they've got to give an ID and a credit card in order to stay at a hotel. So maybe that's how it all originated. This escape was obviously well planned and calculated, he said. Even though most escapes from a county jail are spontaneous, a lot of preparation went into this. They had a lot of resources, had cash, had vehicles, had everything they needed to pull this off. And that's what made this last week and a half so challenging. We started this from ground zero. They got a 6-hour head start on us. Earlier Monday, U.S. Marshals released photos of who they believe was Casey White, caught on a surveillance camera.
I'm sorry, but they could have gotten to Mexico in 6 hours, right? From Alabama, probably.
It takes like 6 hours to get through Texas.
I think it'd be more like 12 to 20. But I mean, they enough of a head start where they probably could have done it. I mean, the entire border with Mexico, as I understand it, is not fenced off, and there are probably places where they could have gotten through. They're just not on the highway, right? I don't know.
I've never driven into Mexico.
Me either.
I never have either.
I've heard that there are places where you can just cross, and then you can even just avoid the Mexican checkpoints on the other side, but they might come after you, Mexico. Sure. So I've heard that there's some fairly loose areas as far as getting in is concerned. But I've also heard that there are some places where the U.S. government has set up outgoing checkpoints. So you cannot just leave without the government knowing that you're leaving. So how widespread those are, I don't know.
I don't either. I've never been. I've never really had any desire to go to Mexico. Before she died, Vicky White was facing new forgery and identity theft charges in Alabama, in addition to the charge of permitting or facilitating escape in the first degree.
Well, it doesn't really matter what she's being
she's dead
charged
now.
with.
However, they were announced Monday, blah, blah, blah. They said she was taking... This is what I wanted to get to. Vicky White was an assistant director of corrections for Lauderdale County. She took Casey White from the county jail on April the 29th.
How?
Well, she said she was taking him for a mental health evaluation, which authorities later learned had not been scheduled. She then said she was going to get medical care after dropping the inmate off because she wasn't feeling well. She She was using her. She was not using her own identity after the escape, evidently. But her
obviously.
Yeah, she said, I'm going to take him for a mental health evaluation. And by the way, afterward, I'm just going to head on home because I'm not feeling well. And no one that she worked with, and they do this sort of thing for a living, say, oh, okay, that's kind of weird.
But
it's kind of crazy. She could just, it wasn't scheduled, and absolutely nobody else needed to sign off on it for her to take an inmate somewhere. That's pretty crazy.
Well, she was the assistant director of corrections. So, I mean, she's
a high up.
Yeah. She was on up there, which makes me wonder, how does she even hook up with this person in the first place?
That's a great question, but yeah, I mean, if you're an inmate planning to escape, you definitely want to hook up with the assistant director instead of just a lowly guard.
Maybe she like sees the pictures of the guys that come in, and she'd been doing this for a while, like picking the ones she wants, going and taking visits.
Could be.
I mean, she could have just found a dude on the outside that was easier and wouldn't.
Yeah, but that's not
require
as
her.
fun.
Well, and that would explain, now that I know that she had a relatively high position in the jail, that better explains the answer of how was she fraternizing with this prisoner, because, she could just say, oh, well, I need to interview the inmate in my office and then, have a little fling.
Why'd she go after a murderer, though? Like, maybe something else.
Like you said, right? That was probably the most exciting one.
Yeah, maybe she gets off on risk.
I mean, she is overseeing a jail, not a prison, because he was awaiting trial, not having.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Not having been convicted yet. So I'm assuming he was in jail. So she probably doesn't deal with very many murderers, or she's probably starstruck, so to speak.
Oh, God.
Investigators found footage of White shopping for men's clothes at a department store and at an adult store, adding she obviously had a change of clothes for the inmates. They're saying she was planning this, right? She knew what she was doing. She bought the vehicles. She got the radio.
They even went to the sex shop. They said an adult store.
They did say an adult store. So, yeah, she even went to the sex shop, it would seem. The patrol car that the officer and inmate took from the jail, that would be the two whites here. I don't know why they suddenly became the officer and inmates at this part of the story this deep in, but they did. They took the car they took from the jail was found abandoned in a shopping center parking lot. That would be Vicky's jail keys, radio, and handcuffs were found inside. Authorities believe the pair left the lot in a different vehicle, her own 2007 Ford SUV that she had parked in the lot the night before. So leaving in her own vehicle, not a good plan, although they had a 6-hour head start, so presumably. The vehicle was spotted on May the 6th at a Tennessee tow lot. It had been abandoned in the woods without any identifying information on the same day the duo escaped. So they drove about 2 hours north from the jail into Tennessee and abandoned the vehicle for a different one.
So she abandoned her own car, and then they got a different car?
Yes.
Interesting.
And it's unclear where the new car came from. They probably stole it. Who knows? Right. But that seems to be where the story ends, although there are so many questions here about how this relationship began, why she felt it was worth throwing away her life, why she ended up shooting herself in the head, why any of this stuff. Why is she now being charged with identity theft, and why was she being charged with identity theft and forgery and all of these other things when helping this guy to escape? It's all very curious.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like she put a gun in her mouth for obvious reasons, although Bonnie thinks she might have just accidentally shot herself in the head.
I'm not saying that's what I think. I'm just saying that's a possibility, too. Her car rolled over. That's like you have no control over what's going on when your car is flipping.
Well,
it does say that that no one in the U.S. Marshals or the Sheriff's Department fired at her. It does not say that she didn't fire any shots at them.
While it is possible that she could have accidentally shot herself in the head, it's not likely that that's what happened. I mean, unless she actually had the gun in her hand and her finger on the trigger.
Why wouldn't they agree to kill themselves or something, and not just her be like, all right, see ya, for the last few minutes they'd be able to spend together. Let me just kill myself right here.
I mean, look, I wouldn't escape a jail to run off with the assistant director of the prison or whatever. But if a girl I was dating was like, okay, something bad could happen, we need to make a suicide pact, I'm escaping the hotel room that night. This chick's crazy, and I don't want anything to do with it. So I can understand why she would be hesitant to bring up, hey, you know that we escaped from jail, so how about a suicide pact? Because at that point, I'd be like, oh no, I think I probably should have just served out my time in jail or whatever and awaited trial. I can't imagine a suicide pact would have been their answer, basically.
Well, I didn't really mean like a premeditated suicide pact, but like if she's like, okay, this is it, we're gonna kill ourselves. I don't know. I just think it's weird to kill yourself when you have like your last few minutes with the person you supposedly love.
That is curious. Share your thoughts with us on the
I don't
meantime.
think it would have been that many minutes. I mean, they were in a car wreck and police were closing in. She probably felt like it was time to end it.
I can't say I blame her considering what she was facing, but a series of stupid decisions. It's been Free Talk Live.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually